Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lorebeards 40K. I did have another co-host lined up, but he's not available, it looks like, and Alexis can't be here today. So we may instead just be doing a Q&A, which I don't think anybody's going to have too much of a trouble with. Let me just make sure and get the... There's a logo here somewhere. I'll worry about it later. Anywho, I've got a super chat right off the bat from Grim Isaac. Thank you, Grim Isaac. It says, Ross, if you haven't gotten around to it yet, a great what if to watch to understand how Ryan and Andy do it and limit the number of theories. And my favorite is, what if the Hobgoblins betrayed the Chaos Dwarfs? I promise we will watch this before we do another what if in the future. I don't have a problem changing up the game plan a little bit. Personally, I kind of like the idea of talking about all the different theories, and I like to get inspired by different ideas for things like my own army, but I do understand that may not be the Lorebeards way, quote unquote. So, oh man, I may have accidentally got rid of the, yeah, there we go. Lorebeards 40K up in the corner. Got it. Hooray. Yeah, so we're doing a Q&A today. So if you guys have questions, throw them at me in the chat and we will answer them as we go. And we've got one from Rush. She says, howdy, between the Eye of Terror, the Rift on Terra, and the Maw Maelstrom in the old world, what other giant anuses are in the Warhammer world? Besides Erebus, that's a given. Fuck Erebus, right? We had a whole episode on that guy. The big ones are the Eye of Terror and the Maelstrom. The Hadex Anomaly is also a really interesting, weird thing going on in space. It's down at the southeastern corner of the galaxy map. I think you'll find it there. It was actually something we talked about in the Jericho Reach, which was a setting for Death Watch, the role-playing game. And I believe it's the southeasternmost anchor of the Great Rift, actually. So worth checking into if you're curious about those kinds of things. And of course, there's the Screaming Vortex, which is the warp storm that separates the Cronus Expanse from the Calixis sector for Rogue Trader and Dark Heresy fans. Hello, Saba. Welcome. Adrian Warad says, the Realm of Khorne in fantasy has the Eye of Terror. Is it the same or just an Easter egg? Okay, I don't know much about the Realm of Khorne in fantasy, to be fair. And the two settings did have a very strong link up until 2003-ish. So it's been about 23 years where they've been kind of separated. That having been said, there was a period of about 20 years before that where they were kind of the same place. So maybe. I'm going to say, if I have to decide right now, I'm going to go ahead and say Easter egg. Boom. And Grim Isaac says, they still talk about the theories. Okay, I mean, again, my favorite part is the theories. But I also can see the appeal of coming up with a story and just sort of telling that story across the what if, and making that the focus and getting deep into that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And as a game master, which I do also run a lot of role-playing games, that is something I've come to understand very, very well. Question from Rush says, are there areas of the eye even Abaddon or a demon Primarch fear to tread? Other than, I'm assuming, the Cadian Gate and all the settlements. Also intro. Right, thank you. Hi, everybody. In case you don't know who I am Ross Watson. I am a game designer and author. I've worked on a whole bunch of Warhammer 40K role-playing game supplements, most of them, in fact. And if you've played the Rogue Trader computer game, that's based on the Rogue Trader role-playing game. So I wrote a whole bunch of that and several video games like Battlefleet Gothic Armada for 40K. And some that were just canceled, like Dark Millennium Online, and another game that I worked on up until last year that was canceled. And on top of that, I was part of the White Dwarf team for a couple of years, so I know my 40K really, really well. If you like the Inquisition, Rogue Traders, or the Death Watch, I am that guy. Thanks, Rush, for the reminder to introduce myself. Appreciate it. And Grim Isaac says, they just cut them as the what if moves along. Okay, thanks. I appreciate all the feedback. Rush says it's a balance wheel figured out. Yeah, that is how it goes. Godzilla says for the Maw. Wait, wrong universe. The Great Maw, I'm presuming. Yeah. Which is basically, I mean, I want to know more about it, but the last time I read about it, it was very much like a sarlacc almost. It was like a giant hole in the earth. Grim Isaac says, "Do you think the Outer Rim should be explored sooner or later?" Yes, absolutely. No reason why you shouldn't. There's plenty of really interesting stuff. The Halo stars, obviously, the Ghoul stars. There's plenty of areas around the edge of the galaxy to learn more about. Obviously, the major issue is that the Astronomic can only go so far. So, for the Imperium specifically, all the other species that don't use the Astronomicon don't have this issue, but for the Imperium specifically, there's a point at which the Astronomicon becomes impossible to see. For anybody who doesn't know, the Astronomicon is a psychic beacon that emanates through the warp, and it's like a lighthouse. And the navigators that plot the courses for Imperial ships, they use the Astronomicon as a guide to tell them which direction they're going and how far and things like that. So if they go beyond the light of the Astronomicon, it's really, really bad because they can't actually navigate. And without the Astronomicon, only very short hops through the warp, like a few light years at a time, are possible. Well, let me rephrase that. Are safe. It is possible to travel further. It's just extremely dangerous. Rush says, taking notes. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, I like to take notes too. I have rule books. I have books full of notes that I take for things as I go along. Great tool for game masters, in fact, too. Taking notes as you go. You're really best off if you have a player who's just excellent at taking notes. Then they're in really good shape. Grim Isaac says only after the clones pacify the separatists. The Outer Rim. Oh, that's a Star Wars reference. Okay, yeah. Yeah, even in Star Wars, there's no reason why you can't go to the Outer Rim. I'm happen to be an expert on Star Wars too, although not as core as Warhammer. Grush, well, aren't the Space Marines nothing if not poorly made clones? They are not clones. They are definitely not clones. I can see how people might get that impression because they do. There is a certain what's the word I'm looking for here? There is a certain homogeneity to the way Space Marines act and think. Their beliefs and traditions do have a lot of things that are alike. And often it can be difficult to tell two Space Marines apart sometimes. So I can see where you're coming from, but they are definitely not clones. The Imperium tends to frown on that as a form of tech heresy. When I say the Imperium, obviously I mean the Adeptus Mechanicus. And one of these days, man, we're going to do an episode all about tech heresy, and I'm going to just go crazy. It's one of my favorite topics. It's tech heresy. Rush, maybe it's a label thing. Theorycraft versus what if. Oh, possibly. Ryan and Indy are pretty hands off with us. They basically said, okay, they set some standards in place of like, here's what we want, here's what our expectations are. But for the format of the show, it's mostly up to me and Alexis. And again, I'm happy to adjust as we go, but Alexis is probably, I don't know, I assume she's probably fine with it too. We just need to find something that works for us as much as it works for y'all. And then if we all get on the same page, we're going to be in great shape. Dirthu's Manservant. Oh, great name. Playing Rogue Trader as you speak. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I need to play it very, very soon. Right now, I'm currently working my way through Space Marine 2 over on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheRossWatson if you want to check me out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Ice Veins and a couple other guys from the chat have been very, very helpful in joining my game, actually, as we play through it. God, what a good game that is. Very, very impressed with Space Marine 2. Space Marine 1 was not that impressive. Biofoot. Hey, welcome, Biofoot, our local Fishman enthusiast. Hooray, Alexis is getting cookies to share with us. Man, I wish. Biofoot, do you have a favorite type of cookie? I'm just curious. I'm a chocolate chip man myself. Peanut butter chocolate chip is the absolute tippy top for me, but I also like Oreos and regular peanut butter cookies and sugar cookies, things like that. But yeah, the tippy top peanut butter chocolate chip. Nestle used to make one that was both flavors, and I don't know why they stopped. I think there was some kind of factory issue. I don't know. Hasn't been available for a long time. All right, we got Rush saying, I got nothing other than Commissar. Sebastian Miller, hi Ross, how's your weekend been? Not bad, not bad. It's actually lovely, 76 degrees outside, a very sunny day. My Basset Hound Biscuit, she has been enjoying the sun, going out and laying in the sunbeams, something one of her favorite things to do. Sebastian Miller says, what about the droid attack on the Wookiees? We are going Star Wars over here in the chat. One of these days we'll have to have like a Star Wars episode. Well, we did have a Star Wars RPG episode for Lorebeards Role Playing, which is our Monday show, in case you're new here. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to talk about Star Wars in general at some point. Grim Isaac, should the Empire make another lighthouse using some MacGuffin that Bellicor stops from being stolen? Poor Bellicor. There was an attempt to do another Astronomicon. It's called the Pharos device. This was something that they tried to do back during the Horus Heresy in the Imperium Secundus. So this would have been Guilliman Sanguinius the Lion. And they did activate the Pharos device, and it did kind of help, but it was also a Xenos or ancient unknown machine. And it is largely implied, it is heavily implied that it was the thing that drew the Tyranids into our galaxy. So kind of a bummer. Looks like my emergency co-host may actually be trying to log in. Let me see if I can give him a hand. All right, let's see. We've got Space Marines are children, but big. I mean, big size. I mean, in many ways, their development has been stunted. I wouldn't call them children, certainly. Immature in many ways is probably a better way to put it. The Pharos Beacon, that's exactly what I was talking about. Grim Isaac, thank you. Was loose. I mean, they don't have to be clones to look alike. A lot of brothers do so. It's more than just looks, though, Wesley's. It's about behavior. It's about beliefs. It's about values. And largely, Space Marines do share a lot of those core things certainly across all of the individual chapters. But Space, okay, like it goes like this. If you're a Space Marine and you're a part of a squad, you and your squad have a pretty strong bond. You're brothers. Your bond is only slightly less to the rest of your chapter. Everyone in your chapter is your brothers or your family. I mean, the guys in your squad are a little closer, but that's about it. But you're all still like exceptionally close. You do everything together all the time. So there are very, very strong bonds of brotherhood within a chapter. Across chapters, like I was saying, so it's going to depend. Like if it's just a random chapter, like let's say you're the Raptors and then the Exorcists show up, you're not going to have as strong a bond with them. Hey, we do have my co-host. I'm going to bring my co-host in. So, hey, there he is. Welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can. Can you see that I am wearing the? The first and most loyal Legion.
The first and most loyal Legion, indeed. Welcome, Brian Eason, everybody. Yeah. Brian, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, old nerd. That's the first thing. Started playing role-playing games in 1979 when I was 14 years old. Started playing 40K the week that Rogue Trader hardback showed up in the comic shop I was co-owner in. Met Ross at a convention, instantly became friends. I now refer to the Dark Angels as the first and most loyal Legion because he said that upon seeing my hat, and I thought that was great. I'm a dad of 3, grandfather of more than that, like 5, 6, something like that. I roll dice every weekend with my friends, and everybody who doesn't do that is extremely jealous of me. And 14-year-old me would be very proud of who I am because nerding it out all the time.
Nice. Well, thank you for that. I do see you're wearing your Aquila t-shirt. I did not put on a Chaos t-shirt for today, although I should have.
I don't think I'm allowed to. If I'm wearing this hat, I'm not allowed to have a Chaos t-shirt.
Oh, the most loyal legion, indeed. So today our topic is going to be about the Eye of Terror, the largest and most pernicious warp storm in the galaxy in Warhammer 40,000, and the largest and most important rip in reality between the material world and the immaterium, between reality and the warp. So, Ethan, could you briefly describe what is the warp? I can help out.
I think if they're watching this, they probably have a good idea what the warp is. It's chaos made manifest. It's I don't know. You go ahead. You're professional.
All right, fair enough. The warp is a dimension other than our own. It is one composed of energy, but it's not like you and I would recognize it. It's also a place of metaphor. It's a place where dreams and beliefs can be made manifest in different ways. Largely in 40K, it is portrayed as a hell dimension. It is just really awful. It's full of demons and predators and weird, strange beings that want to lay their eggs in your brain. They're called the Psychonoin. They live on Prospero, or they have lived on Prospero in the past. If you're curious, look them up. They're terrifying. There's the enslavers of the warp. There's all of the demons and the great ruinous powers, which are called the Chaos Gods, although they are more like cosmic forces of nature than like living beings with agency and agendas. But there you go.
And I'd go so far as to say that it's I wouldn't say it's purely psychic energy, but like it's mostly psychic energy. The warp.
Yeah, the warp is what fuels psychic powers and nearly all supernatural abilities that are used in Warhammer 40,000. We have an episode on the power of faith. If you want to go check that out, that is one of the few supernatural abilities that is not powered by the warp. We think.
Sure,
we believe.
Yeah. All the good guy psychic powers are definitely not coming from the warp.
Ethan, my friend, there is a thing we say on this channel a lot, and that saying is there are no good guys in 40K.
Yes.
So to talk about the Eye of Terror, though, we have to talk about two things very briefly prior to this. First is the War in Heaven. Are you familiar with this, Ethan?
Yeah, but it's been a minute. It's been a while since I read all this stuff.
Fair enough. I will help you out. The War in Heaven was around 65 million years prior to the current date.
That's Necrons and Eldar, right? We call it Eldari now. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, at the time they were the Necrontyr, and they were going to war with a race called the Old Ones.
Yeah.
As Alexis, my other co-host, likes to say, frogs refused to give cancerous people chemotherapy, and they got angry and started a war. So the Necrontyr went to war with the Old Ones. This was a massive conflict that devastated entire star systems. The Eldari and the Krorks were species created by the Old Ones to help them in this battle against the Necrontyr, and their allies, the Satan, which were called star gods, which were beings of energy, but only confined to the material world. The Satan could not enter the warp. They were not beings of the warp. In fact, the warp was a strong weapon against the Satan and the Necrons in general.
And the Old Ones may have created the Slan and the Jakaro, right?
Possibly, or the Solani or the Jakaro were Old Ones. It's unclear. Let's put it. It's 65 million years ago. Nobody knows for sure what the truth is. All we have is some records by the Eldari, which is very mythic and legendary, and we have some stories from the Necrons who are biased. So who knows what really happened?
Biased robot pharaohs. That's what I'm calling them from now on.
There you go. That's a good one. So the old ones, they created these powerful psychic species like the Eldari, like the Krorks, to fight the Necrons by weaponizing the warp. The scale of slaughter and psychic warfare polluted and agitated the warp, which gave rise to hostile warp entities and early chaos phenomena. The Necrons and the Satan eventually won, quote unquote, because the enslavers wiped out the old ones. We think. This is all. We have a whole episode on the War in Heaven. Go check this out if you really want to know more. But essentially, the Necrons went to sleep. The Krorks started to devolve into the Orcs, and the Eldari inherited the webway from the old ones, and then began to establish a galaxy-wide civilization called the Eldari Empire or the Eldari Dominion. And this lasted for a very, very long time, millions and millions of years. So then we get to the second big event, which is called the Fall of the Eldar. The Fall of the Eldar happened roughly 10,000 years ago, give or take 500 or 600 years from the current date, just prior to the Great Crusade. And as my co-host Alexis likes to say, the Eldari culture grew so decadent that they gooned a chaos god into existence. Their rampant hedonism and excess of the Eldari Dominion got to a point, a critical mass point, basically. And how do I put this? So after the War in Heaven, the Eldari Dominion became the dominant galactic power, and they were technologically supreme. They had a lot of psychic strength as well. They had no real serious rivals, and with no real external purpose, their people turned inward, and they increasingly drove themselves toward cruelty and hedonism and even like murder cults. I mean, it got bad. It got real bad. This collective excess and the intense emotions that Eldari feel bled into the warp for millennia. So remember how I said the warp kind of reacts to beliefs and emotions and things like that? Eldari in general feel things much more strongly than a human. And the best example I can give you is if you've ever been to a concert, like a really, really big concert, and everybody in that concert hall is vibing with the same emotion, with coming off the stage. If we're all just like really in tune with the music, and we're all really hyped, or we're really sad, or we're really, you feel it. You feel like you're connected to all these other people, and that emotion is compounded, right?
Right.
That's how Eldari feel all the time. Their emotions go way higher and way more intense, typically, than humans do.
So, Kalamincha Kane also comes from that era too.
Right. All the Eldari gods were around, and unfortunately, though, when the fall of the Eldar happened, so the critical mass of this excess and murder and hedonism, it created a psychic shockwave.
Right.
When this new chaos god was born, it was literally like emerged into existence from this collective psychic gestalt of the entire, most of the civilization that had been so deep into this hedonism. And when this being was born, it was called Slaanesh. It was the chaos god of pleasure and excess. Slaanesh devoured most of the Eldari gods. Only a few survived. To this day, the ones we know of are Kalamincha Kane, who was shattered into several pieces, which was the god of murder and battle for the Eldari. There was Isha, the goddess of healing and fertility, and she was captured by Nurgle and taken to his domain. There was Segarak, also called the Laughing God, the god of tricksters, and he hid himself in the webway.
Yeah. That's where we get the Harlequins from.
Right, the Harlequins. But those are the only ones we know of that survived. Anyway, so this event created the Eye of Terror as we know it today. Because when Slaanesh was born, and the Eldari civilization was devoured. All their souls were forfeit, and the whole thing. It created a rip in reality in between our dimension and the warp, and that is called the Eye of Terror, which is a enormous storm of warp energy that covers several star systems. It runs across many, many light years. Now, fun fact: why did I bring up the War in Heaven for this?
Don't know. I'm trying to. I'm digging. It's just been.
It's fine. It's fine. So we know that there was the War in Heaven occurred, and that it was largely fought between psychic races, that is, races who use the warp as a weapon, versus the Necrons and the Satan.
Right.
We also know that there is a area near the Eye of Terror that is the only stable path in and out of the Eye of Terror. It is called the Cadian Gate. And that is created by and sustained by Necron pylons that are present on Cadia and many other worlds used to be present, I should say, across many other worlds. And therefore, it is largely suspected or implied that the Eye of Terror existed before the fall of the Eldar, that it was somehow like it was described in one of the novels by Robert Rath. I don't know. It was described in one of the Trazen stories from the Black Library. It was described as a wound in reality that had been sutured shut, and then the fall of the Empire ripped it back open.
Right.
Fall of the Eldar.
Yeah, and it's a big rip too. It's like, was it 20,000 light years across or some nonsense?
It's massive. It is massive. When you live on Cadia, which is the world that is sort of one of the closest worlds to the Eye of Terror, you can see it fill most of the sky at night. And it's visible. It's visible from many, many, many sectors away. It's big. It's very big.
It's very big and full of chaos.
Yes. This is not a show about the Eldari, although we do have episodes about that if you want to go look at our playlist. And we talk about like where all those bands of the Eldari survivors ended up after the fall of the Eldar. But that is all I really have to say about the Eldari, because we need to talk about the Eye of Terror. So according to the lore itself, it's there's an Inquisitor Dalma, who wrote a book called the Galaxia Demonica Perpetua, which is a great name. I love that. And she describes it.
I love all the fake Latin. It's my favorite.
Yes. You mean High Gothic there.
Yeah. Well, okay, so what's the Eye of Terror? It's the Ocularis Terribilis.
Terribulum. Yeah, Terribulum. Ocularis Terribulum. Sorry, Ocularis Terribus. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Terribus. Yeah. Ocularis Terribus. So she says the Eye of Terror is a realm of madness and despair where the skies weep blood, ancient stars burn in multicolored flares, and the whims of the dark gods of chaos hold sway. It is synonymous with discord, terror, ancient secrets, and insanity, and no other place in the galaxy fills the mind with such dread and foreboding.
That's a lot.
I feel like it's legit, though. I feel like that is.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's pure psychic energy, full of demons and nonsense, and it also, like you said, it's. If I were to believe that 40K was capable of metaphor, and it is, the idea of a 20,000, I looked it up, 20,000 light year wide rift, chaos rift, that you can see from, systems away, is sort of like if the Milky Way was going to get you and you saw it every night. Like, it's, the metaphor being, here's the big bad, just a reminder, while y'all are playing miniatures and Marines are fighting Eldar, and other things that aren't chaos, that this is the real enemy, which is an interesting focus. With the newer books and stuff and the Primarchs returning, I kind of see more of that. Did you not notice the Eye of Terror and literally all these Chaos Legions that used to be our friends? That's the real enemy. We don't like the Xenos, but that's a much bigger problem.
True. Although I would argue not all Chaos Space Marines were once our friends. The Night Lords. The Night Lords were never anybody's friend.
You mean like angsty Batman guy? I swear to God, a friend of mine came and was like, I'm playing the Night Lords, and I went, that's just like 40K Bruce Wayne, and but with a lot of mental problems. So it's
Space Batman. And the Night Lords were never anyone's friend, not even during the Great Crusade.
No, that's fair.
Okay, moving on. So the Eye of Terror, Ocularis Terribilis, it is the largest, most infamous, and most spiritually catastrophic location in the known Milky Way galaxy. It is a permanent warp rift approximately 20,000 light years across. It is positioned in the Segmentum Obscurus, galactic northwest of Terra. And it is a place where the immaterium, the warp, coexists with real space, with reality. They are one. You can transition from reality to the warp, but most of that space is a space where they overlap. It is not just an anomaly. It is a living wound in the fabric of the universe. It is a scar left by the most devastating event in the history of the Eldari species, certainly, and the birthplace of a chaos god, that's Slaanesh, and the 10,000-year-old fortress of the traitor legions who nearly brought the Imperium of Man to its knees back during the Horus Heresy. And most people believe that the Eye of Terror was created, or something like it was created during the War in Heaven. It appears to have been first torn open during that conflict because, again, that's why the Necrons clearly put stuff there to try and deal with it, right? To try and seal it. And apparently prior to the fall of Slaanesh, it was a completely sealed wound in reality. So there's that. The Blackstone pylons that the Necrons put into place, these devices were capable of nullifying and suppressing warp energy, and their goal was to keep the warp completely away from reality as much as possible, because, again, the old ones and their creations were using the warp as a weapon. The Necrons never completed the full network before they went to their civilization went to sleep at the end of the War in Heaven. So we don't really know anything more than that. We know that it may have been open, and we know that they put something in place to try and shut it, and that's all we know. And then there's the Eldari and the fall of the Eldar, which we already covered. Then we get to what is, like, let's talk about the anatomy of the eye. It's not a black hole. It's not a nebula. It's not any conventional astronomical phenomenon. That's a fun word to say, isn't it, Ethan? Phenomenon.
Phenomenon?
Da, 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 da.
We're old.
We're serious. We're men of a certain age, as I like to say on this show. So at the very center of the eye is a place called the Byssos, or the hole in the fabric of reality. This is where the raw chaos energy pours continuously into the material universe. The eye itself is not necessarily uniform in size. The outer edge is mostly warp storms and roiling tempests of psychic energy. Again, the only way that's stable in and out is the Cadian Gate. Now, all of this is prior to the Great Rift, which we will talk about, because the Great Rift kind of screwed everything up. Some of the interior regions of the Eye of Terror, though, are relatively stable, and they even support something like an interstellar civilization. It's just one that's entirely devoted to the ruinous powers, the Chaos Gods.
Yeah, they're even a significant number of planets that, I mean, there's like a home world for each of the Chaos Legions that are still there. Bubonicus, one of my favorite. I just love the name Bubonicus. Is Nurgle's homeworld.
Yeah, we can talk about what's in there, but first I want to just briefly mention that. Well, actually, let me posit this question to you, Eason. How do physics function in the Eye of Terror, if they do at all?
It's literally chaos. But yeah, I mean, it's if I recall correctly, it's it you can kind of force your will on it to make things work the way you want them to.
Yeah, physics as we understand it is basically meaningless inside the Eye of Terror. Time is not linear, and that's just a fact. That's just a factor of the warp. Is that time can be very weird in the warp. A Chaos Space Marine might enter the Eye of Terror. He might survive what feels like a century of brutal warfare, and then he might emerge back into the material world to realize that it's 1,000 years later. That's just how things work in the warp. It's very strange. Ships are flowing across great distances by currents of pure psychic energy, and demon princes can reshape terrain with a thought. Colors that have no name in human language bleed across the sky. It is a very cosmic horror type of place. It's very Lovecraftian in many ways.
Yeah. I'm not going to mention all the British comics that also influenced it.
Oh no, please. Let's talk about what
Nemesis the Warlock. Are you familiar with this?
Okay, so you're talking. I think what you're talking about is the 2000 AD series of comics from 80s British comic book culture that encompass a lot of different titles, and one of these titles is Nemesis the Warlock.
Yeah, so Nemesis the Warlock is, and I'm not throwing any stones here. Y'all throw your own stones based on this. There is an emperor on Terra who hates Xenos, and he is the bad guy in the story. And his arch nemesis is an alien called Nemesis, who is a member of a race called the Warlocks. And he serves chaos, sort of. And most of the stuff that they pulled from that, was Michael Moorcock, who the sign of chaos was created by, and the idea of law versus chaos instead of good versus evil is straight out of Moorcock. And so I read them like when I was a kid, and they were printing them, and I had copies in the United States that they compile up. And then I reread them recently, and I went, holy smoke. Did they just take like half of their plot line from this? Also, I was reading Judge Dredd, and there were Land Raiders in it, and they were called Land Raiders. And the Emperor in Nemesis the Warlock has an army of super soldiers that wear body armor that are called Terminators.
Yeah, well, I would say between 2000 AD and Dune, that's a big chunk of the foundational lore of 40K.
Yeah, well, yeah, and again, when I first started playing it, we didn't have a whole lot of lore. Just like it was here's your space marine, here's your space elf, I got an old Zote that was irrelevant. So back to the Eye.
Right. We have some super chats I need to read. So we've got a super chat from Syndicalist Wallower. That's a great name. Howdy, y'all. He says, I am running an Only War game right now. My team is playing Alpha Legion Infiltrators. Oh, shit. That's interesting that you're using Only War, not Deathwatch. Just off the PDF, the Planetary Defense Force Marshall on Malfi. Malfi is a world in the Calixis sector, so this is also near. This is definitely Dark Heresy era or ish as well. Next is the governor of Malfi. Well, Malfi's a bad place. You probably will just be improving things, honestly, on Malfi. With Alpha Legion, I mean, they might actually make the place better. That's great, though. I'm glad that you're enjoying Only War with Space Marines in Malfi. That's just fantastic. Those are all things from the Warhammer 40K roleplay line. So, except for obviously Alpha Legion. So, thank you. Very cool. I should point out that super chats are the absolute best way to keep our channel going and to support the hosts. So we are grateful to everybody who does a super chat with us. And I do think I don't have the. There we go. I didn't have the background up. I had just the logo because it was my face before you showed up. So now we've got the correct graphics now. Got a super chat from Grim Isaac. Michael Moorcock mentioned drink some water.
You are objectively a human of taste.
So one of the things I like to talk about on this channel is the connection to Michael Moorcock. Brian Ansell, who was one of the two guys that basically created the setting between him and Rick Priestley. Brian Ansell was the guy who was super into Michael Moorcock and really wanted to add that supernatural element of demons and chaos and weird, crazy stuff into the galaxy. Whereas Rick Priestley was more on the satirical sci-fi side of the creation process. He was more into...
Which would be your 2000 AD, which was almost entirely satirical, including Judge Dredd, inspiration for the Adeptus RPDs.
Yeah, the RPDs, yep. So, thank you for that. That's great. And so there's there are several different types of worlds within the Eye of Terror, but there's two types that are really important to talk about. The first are the Crone worlds. Now, Eason, are you familiar with the Crone worlds?
I am vaguely familiar with the Crone worlds.
So, like we were saying, the fall of the Eldar is what created Slaanesh and reopened the wound in reality, if you believe the Necrons, if you believe the story of the War in Heaven.
Oh, so those were the first worlds the Eldari colonized, right?
The Crone worlds are former Eldari worlds that are within the Eye of Terror.
Right.
It's poignant and it's haunting because these are the shattered remains of the Eldari Dominion, the Eldari Empire, whatever you want to call it. I know Dominion is a term a lot of people use these days. The Crone worlds were not destroyed by the birth of Slaanesh, although some worlds were probably destroyed, but these are the ones that are left. And they were pulled into the warp, or at least partially into the warp. And their surfaces are twisted and reshaped by the raw energies of chaos until each Crone world became its own nightmarish sub-reality, if you will. There are ancient Eldari things on all these worlds. There's relics, there's weapons, there's items of power, records. There's all kinds of stuff there that would make going to one of these worlds worthwhile. And some Eldari Corsairs have made... Well, some Eldari forces, including the Corsairs, have made efforts to go to Crone worlds using the webway to gather spirit stones, which are items that they use to safeguard their souls against Slaanesh, who wants to devour all the Eldari souls. Period.
But what about the Drukhari?
The Drukhari, they'll go to Crone worlds too, but for different reasons.
Quick call out. Grand Breton from Hawkmoon, definitely an influence on the Empire.
Oh, is that from the chat, or is that something you just wanted to add?
That's from the chat. No, it's
okay.
From the chat. Great call out.
From Gary Garianson, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Hawkmoon, Dark Empire of Grabritan. What a great name. I need to reread. Moorcock actually just grabbed all of his books on EPUB for my e-reader, and I need to reread them again.
I reread them about once a year.
You, sir, are a man of culture.
First fantasy I read, and everybody went, "Have you read Lord of the Rings?" I said, "Not yet." Have you read Stormbringer?
Nice.
Yeah.
Fun fact: Elric of Melniboné is essentially, well, is exactly created as an anti-Conan.
Yeah.
All of his characteristics are the exact opposite of Conan's, and that was on purpose. From the creator, Gary Garrison says, "Are you familiar with Stephen Baxter's Zeely books?" I am not.
I am, but it's been a minute since I read them. But do go on.
Thank you. Yeah, our chat is very well read, and they are always coming up with, like, have you read this? Have you seen that? It's pretty great, actually. The community that supports us here is called the Lore Seekers, and they are part of our Discord group. I will just put a quick link to Discord in the chat for anybody who's curious. If you want to join us and find out what we're up to, or comments, or even give us some ideas for future episodes, you can find it there on our Discord. Let's see. Yeah, so the Crone Worlds are the only known source of spirit stones. These are psychic crystals the Eldari use to capture and preserve the soul at the moment of death, and this prevents them from being devoured by Slaanesh. So expeditions to the Crone Worlds are therefore undertaken regularly and desperately sometimes by the Eldari, particularly the Craft World Eldari, despite the near suicidal danger involved in going to a Crone World. They are nasty. They are bad. Although we don't have a lot of information on them, and this is one of the aspects of the lore I would love to see explored more in depth. I'd love to see a book that focuses on what a Crone World is like. We do have that book, Trader General, which is part of the Gaunt's Ghost series, where we get to see what a world occupied by chaos is like, and that was, oh my god, one of my favorite novels. It just absolutely blew my mind.
Well, Abnett can do no wrong in my house, and number one, and number two is, I got to that one, and I was not prepared for what I got. I was like, oh, this is bad. This is super bad.
Listen, Dan Abnett is an incredibly talented dude, and I've met him. I wouldn't say we're friends, but I would hope he remembers me, but I'm not sure he would. I remember him. Anyway, Dan is a great guy, just a good human being, as well as a very talented dude. But I would say that I find him to be, when he's good, he's very, very good. But there are sometimes he does do a novel, and I'm like, this didn't work for me. Prospero Burns is one of the books I point to and say that one did not work.
Yeah, that one's the same for me.
Okay.
Specifically that one. I was like, who wrote this? And I went, oh wait, it's Dan Abnett.
You're like,
I was listening to it on audiobook while 3D printing 40K terrain. So, and I was like, wait a minute, this is Dan Abnett?
Most of the time, he's excellent. So let's just all put it that way. There is a world called the Crone World of Urim the Dead Alive, which is a great name. I love that name, the Dead Alive. Its surface is encrusted with the fused bones and half-melted faces of the Eldari who died during the fall of the Eldar. They're still screaming in the walls. This world was visited by the renegade apothecary Fabius Bile, who is also a Chaos Space Marine. And he established his principal cloning facilities there.
And you just described like the cover of half of the heavy metal albums I have. I was just like, that's something like out of, Black Sabbath or Warrior or whatever.
All right, so you take Dune, and you take a bunch of heavy metal albums, and you take Michael Moorcock, and you throw them all into a blender with some 2000 AD. And I'm going to pour you a nice hot steaming cup of 40K.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I, in particular, remember a lot of the music that I listened to at the time going, hey, we should play this while we're playing in the background while we're playing 40K. This is some good stuff.
Oh, I should. There's a way I wanted to start this episode. You weren't here, unfortunately, so I didn't get to use it, but I'll use it now. There's this guy called Cole McGuinness on YouTube who's a singer. He's actually really great. And he's got a song about the Eye of Terror. And it's just awesome. And like the chorus is, from the eye we come, to the eye we shall return. To the end of all things, the Imperium shall burn.
Nice.
It's fucking great. So I strongly recommend anybody who's curious go check out Cole McGinnis on YouTube and look up the. I think it's called "To the Eye We Shall Return" is the name of the song. I could be wrong. And we got a super chat from Rush 21129 who says, "Favorite world in the eye? Mine is Scalathrax. Khan got name." Okay, I'm not sure. Sorry, Rush. I don't know what that means on the last part. But Scalathrax is a world. Let me just double check. Is that on my list? No, it's not. Why is it not on my list? Okay. So let me just do a quick lookup on Scalathrax. Because I am very curious now. I feel like I probably should have put it on my list if it was really important. There's got to be... Yeah, Scalathrax is a demon world. There we go. Yep. It is a crone world. All right. The Battle of Scalathrax. This is where the World Eaters Legion fought the Emperor's children after the Horus Heresy. That's where it's from. Okay. And that's where Karn earned his title, the Betrayer. There we go. Okay. Cool. Yeah, this is from, you can find out more about this in the Black Library's book called Karn, Eater of Worlds. And there's a short story called The Weakness of Others, which is also set in Scalathrax.
Good old Karn.
Oh, yeah. Surprisingly, you would be shocked to read about Karn in the Great Crusade. Prior to the Siege of Terra, Karn was a pretty stand-up dude.
Yes, frankly. He was.
Yeah. He's a pretty stand-up dude.
Yeah, and what this one of the things I like about Karn is that you climb so high, and it's half of it's biblical metaphors of they're like 25 Lucifers in here that were angels and then fell, right? Or at least in the case of all the Primarchs that fell. 9. But, 9. Yeah, in 9. But I just was picking a random number because I was thinking about Karn and I was thinking about some of the others. But Karn, that you're at such heights and morally like so good that's the perfect target to tempt, right? And that when you fall from grace, you fall hard, and he definitely did. That's why I like Karn, because I'm like, man, you could have. Because everybody, I don't know, I'm sure half the people on there have seen it. You look at subreddits or whatever, and they do. What if Horus had been the good guy, and then they put him in this? I was like, what if Karn had stayed the good guy?
You would have had to leave. You would have had to have left his legion to do that.
Yeah,
and he was not willing to do that. Frankly, during Crusade era legions were very different than current Space Marine chapters. The bonds that held these people together were stronger. They'd been together for hundreds of years,
right?
Doing this thing and being very proud of it. It was celebrated. They were heroes of the Imperium, with some exceptions. Obviously, the Night Lords were never heroes.
Who hurt you? What did Night Lords do to you personally?
Well, Karn specifically, though, yeah, he. That would be a fun episode. We do occasionally do episodes called "What Ifs," where we say like, "What if this happened?" Right. Actually, this last week we said, "What if Isha escaped Nurgle's garden?" and we covered that. But what if Karn had remained loyal is a pretty interesting question. He would have had to have left the World Eaters, which is difficult but possible. I mean, you have Nathaniel Garrow, you have Loken of the Luda Wolves. There's plenty of examples of guys who left, who abandoned their legion during the heresy. So it could happen. It's a tough choice to make. It's not an easy thing for a Space Marine to leave his legion behind. Anyway, yeah, it'd be fun to talk about that. But let's talk about the other kinds.
Let's talk about the Eye of Terror.
Right. So first of the Crone worlds. Do you know what the second type of world is?
I do not.
Demon worlds.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So some planets
classification. I was still thinking Eldar. Sorry. Excuse me, Eldar.
It's fine. You can call them Eldar here. We all know what you're talking about. So some planets have become demon worlds. These planets are just so saturated with warp energy that they no longer reflect the laws of physics or any other recognizable categorization. Instead they have a reflection of the will and the nature of whatever chaos god dominates that world. So each of these demon worlds is very unique and horrifying, and often, they are the domain of a specific demon prince.
Like good old Anthrax, which is one letter away from.
Yes, Anthrax. Anthrax, yes. This one's dominated by Nurgle, and it is the site of the fall of the Iron Drakes chapter during the Abyssal Crusade. I want to talk about this so bad. The Abyssal Crusade would be a lot of fun to talk about. The chapter survivors on Anthrax, they eventually became a Chaos warband called the Grey Death.
Mm-hmm.
The Abyssal Crusade. There's also a world called Zana 2. Zana 2 is a domain of the Dark Mechanicum, or as they like to call themselves, the New Mechanicum. It is a hellish forge world deep within the Eye of Terror, and it churns out demon engines and weapons for the highest bidder. It is fueled by the labor of countless slaves. So, I mean, there's definitely that sounds like Detroit to me. I don't know.
There's whoa, that was tough. Sicarius, World Eaters, Homeworld. Is that right?
I'm sorry.
Sicarius.
Sicarius, yes. Sicarius is the Word Bearers homeworld.
Word Bearers. That's what it is.
Word Bearers. It is covered entirely in cathedrals and temples, and of course, they're all dedicated to the ruinous powers. It is governed, I don't know if I would say ruled, it's governed by the Dark Council of the Dark Apostles. These guys are very dark. They want you to know they're evil as hell, okay? They're called the Dark Council of Dark Apostles. Corfarin, I believe, is actually one of the Dark Apostles. I could be wrong. Got a super chat from Ricky Chapman coming in with a steel chair. Thank you so much, Ricky Chapman. Yo, it's our birthday today. Happy birthday, Ricky. Ricky Chapman, his home group, they like to play a lot of role-playing games set in 40K, so they're always telling us about their campaign. He's reminiscing about the demon world we lived on in a chaos campaign called Vracus. The screams are sweeter than cream, bodies swinging from the trees, their flesh pulled taut by demonettes and nurglings. Oh my god. Wow.
This guy knows how to party.
Yeah. So I presume, Ricky Chapman, were you using Black Crusade for this campaign? Black Crusade is a role-playing game from the Fantasy Flight Games era. I get to write for this, and one of the things we worked on was worlds that were within the Screaming Vortex, which is a warp storm not unlike the Eye. And I remember one of the worlds I built there was actually one that was being fought over by two different Dark Mechanicum Magoses, or Magi? Magoses. Anyway, and I described it as a world that had been it had crumbled away thanks to all the mining and deep core extraction these guys had done. And I described it like a half-eaten apple just hanging there in space, which is, according to the laws of physics, entirely impossible. That wouldn't have, you literally can't have a world where the core is exposed like that. But in places like the Eye of Terror, that is absolutely possible.
I was trying to remember one. Oh yeah, Planet of the Sorcerers, which sounds like a 70s sorcery movie.
It does have a shorter name. It's called Sortiarius is the short version. Yeah, this the Planet of the Sorcerers is of course dominated by Tzeentch. It is where Magnus the Red and all the Thousand Sons went after the Battle of Prospero. Yeah. They were transported there. Yeah, that's a weird place with a lot of weird guys who have a lot of weird powers. Just imagine like floating towers through the sky and cackling demons riding on ribbons of light, and that's kind of what you have there on Sortiarius. Let me see. Did I find? I was trying to find more information. The Abyssal Crusade, right? Okay. So this was a very grim disaster for the Imperium. They essentially gift wrapped a bunch of Space Marine chapters and handed them over to Chaos because 30 different chapters were sent into the Eye of Terror as a penitent crusade. Yeah, that was my face too, Ethan. 30,
Yeah.
30 different chapters.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I have a vague recollection of this. And I was trying to think of who you said 30, and I went, yeah, I remember that.
So this was back in M37. So this is a roughly 4,000 years prior to the current date. And the Imperial Saint Basilius said that these chapters of Space Marines had been found spiritually wanting. And he ordered them to go on a penitent crusade directly into the Eye of Terror. This is a weird ass story. Like I gotta imagine you're a chapter master. You're like, I don't work for the Ministorum. I don't work for the Ecclesiarchy. Who the hell is this guy telling me I got to do this thing? Basilius must have been a hell of a dude with a lot of influence.
And then they got like excommunicated, right?
Well, no, they were told they had to do this or be excommunicated. Yeah, it was either this or be excommunicated. They were called the Judged, this group of 30 Space Marines. And they were told to prove their loyalty, they had to go purge worlds in the Eye of Terror, which is just a horrible idea. They fought across roughly 400 different planets. They killed vast numbers of Chaos forces, but suffered catastrophic casualties and corruption from their own in the process. So, yeah, they gift wrapped a bunch of chapters, and here you go. That is literally crazy.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that the Crusaders of Dorne. That seems like a crowd that wouldn't go to dark side, but and who are now apparently the Brotherhood of Lethe. So
Brotherhood of what?
Lethe.
Leith. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's
they're a Chaos Warband now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens. You go to the Eye of Terror, you turn into the bad guy. I mean, there are no good guys, but you turn into an even more non-good guy.
Yeah, I was looking at their all their warband names, and I was like, some of these are kind of on the nose, but
Some revelations in the lore later said that Basilius was himself corrupted by Chaos, and that he used his authority to weaken the Imperium and recruit for the Dark Gods all at the same time. Only a handful of chapters emerged with their loyalty intact from the Abyssal Crusade. Most of them were annihilated. Others became Chaos Warbands. One of the loyalist chapters that survived is the Vorpal Swords.
Yeah, I was just looking at that one. I was going to go. I think they turned back the other way. I want to know if they went snicker snack. That's the biggest question I have.
According to the lore, the Vorpal Swords are the ones who uncovered Basilius' treachery and had him condemned. Some lore sources say that they had Basilius' remains shot into a star as punishment. So yeah, the Abyssal Crusade is holy shit. What a great way to have a bunch of new Chaos Warbands show up. What a horrible disaster for the goddamn Imperium.
So I love that all this exists, but that apparently it's like on 4 pages. I mean, like it just appears in Space 6th edition from 17 to 19, and then it's mentioned again in the 5th edition rule book, or previously on page 125. And I was like, why is there not just like novels about this?
Mortarion, the demon primarch of the Death Guard, he has a world within the Eye of Terror where viridian clouds of pestilence cover the globe. So all these green storms of disease cover the entire planet. He apparently reshaped it to resemble his former homeworld of Barbarous, which is interesting. Barbarous was a very mountainous world, a lot of rocks and crags and tall ranges of peaks, things like that. We talked about Planet of the Sorcerers. There's also Medrengard. Are you familiar with Medrengard?
I am not.
Okay, so Medjugorje, this is one of the few worlds that does not have a single chaos god's influence. Instead, it's just a sort of undivided chaos region. It is ruled by the Iron Warriors, and it is the home of the demon Primarch Perturabo, which is their Primarch. And it's the description of it is that it is a single planet spanning fortress of impossible towers and labyrinthine dungeons. Now that's a heavy metal album cover for you. I mean, it's like an Escher painting plus like the bleakest World War II siege imagery you can imagine, right? I mean, Medjugorje is bad. It's really bad. There's a planet. Go ahead.
Malium comes to mind.
Okay.
That's where Abaddon hangs out.
Yes, Abaddon the Despoiler, who is the big bad, if you will. He's the primary antagonist in Warhammer 40,000. We have talked about him a little bit before. Obviously, he does, prior to the 13th Black Crusade, which they revisited this back in 2017, and a lot of stuff happened, including a warp storm that ripped the galaxy in half from edge to edge. And yeah, Abaddon was here. Malleus, is that the name of the world? Malleum? Sorry? Malleum? Okay.
I think it was just looking at a picture. I'm right.
There's a world called Drakasi, which is a world primarily dominated by Khorne. It is ruled by a demon prince called Ebendrake, which is a great name. Ebendrake is described as reptilian, and the surface of the planet is blood-soaked seas that are connecting different gladiatorial arena cities. So it's kind of a really bleak reflection of Nuceria, which was the original homeworld of Angron. But yeah, Seas of Blood and Arena City. I mean, gotta admit, like some of these worlds sound kind of awesome in a heavy metal album cover sort of way.
Exactly.
Like, there's a part of me, I'm not gonna lie, there's a part of me that's like, I would love to go like adventure on one of these worlds.
Yeah, it's a nice place to visit, but you don't want to live there.
God, no, you don't want to live there. There's a world simply called Sublime, which is another world that is not really ruled by any particular chaos god. Sublime serves as a trading hub and a black market. Yeah, they have merchants in the Eye of Terror. And Sublime is a place that serves renegades of every faction. It is surrounded by very heavily armed orbital defenses, I presume, to keep the peace and ensure that no single Chaos Warlord controls it. Kind of like Tortuga, in a way, I imagine.
Yeah, that's
Sublime. What a great name. It's Sublime.
But maybe
love it.
Maybe think of the band, but
I mean, yeah, that or the moment in the Barbie movie. But yeah, it's just really cool. There's a place called Cathalon. We're not going to go over all of them, but there's a place called Cathalon. It's a world where it's a great burning lake crisscrossed by bridges of brass and bone. It is dominated by the influence of Khorne, and it is an eternal battleground between the forces of Tzeentch and Khorne. They just constantly fight there. Tuska Demon Killer, I think, is also in the Eye of Terror somewhere, which is an orc war boss that went into the warp and ended up fighting the forces of Khorne forever and ever and ever. And we have a comment from Wesloose. I bet Ebendrake is a black dragon-looking lizard person. I mean, possibly. Ebendrake being his name, I would not be surprised if his scales were black.
In the dark future of the 41st millennium, anything is possible.
Yeah, the naming conventions seem to be pretty solid. Like you have Ferrus Manus, whose name means Iron Hand. He's in charge of the Iron Hands. He literally has iron hands. There's a guy called Corvus Corax, which means Raven, and he's in charge of the Raven Guard. And there's a guy called the Styrian Moloch, which means Bulbul, and he's in charge of the Minotaurs chapter. These are just a few of the naming conventions you will find in 40K. 40K is great. I love it. It's a very grim, dark, bleak setting, but it also is silly as hell sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the British have a sense of humor. It's just not one that we understand.
It's often very dry. Yeah.
No offense to any Brits. I love Brits, and I love British humor, but it's a lot drier than even when it's being particularly absurd. The Eben Drake here is listed as and maybe there's more than one Eben Drake, is a assault ship.
Yeah, there's probably that name's been used more than once. I'm sure that's true.
Oh, okay. All right.
So let's talk about the more recent events, the post-Horus Heresy Eye of Terror. When Horus Lupercal's rebellion against the Emperor failed, and this collapsed at the Siege of Terra roughly 10,500 years before the current date in 40K, he had with him 9 legions of Space Marines. He had the Death Guard, he had the Emperor's Children, the Iron Warriors, the World Eaters, the Word Bearers, the Alpha Legion, and the Sons of Horus, which became the Black Legion. The Night Lords, I think, Death Guard, Thousand Sons, that's one I forgot. Death Guard, Thousand Sons, World Eaters, Emperor's Children, Iron Warriors, that's 5. Word Bearers, Night Lords, Alpha Legion, Sons of Horus. That is the 9. Sorry. Got to make sure I named them all because I'm supposed to be the expert. If I forget, somebody's going to come down and be like, hey, you forgot. So these 9 legions, they were driven away from Terra. There was a thing called the Scouring where the Imperium basically chased them off, and they all fled into the Eye of Terror. And so for over 10,000 years, the Eye of Terror has been the home and the prison and the staging ground and the damnation of all of these legions. Because life within the Eye of Terror corrupts relentlessly. It is people who enter the Eye of Terror are just constantly exposed to raw chaos energy, which warps their bodies with mutation to reflect their inner nature. Well, often reflecting their inner nature. And often reflecting the chosen patron god, which, of the 4, there's Nurgle, god of decay and disease, Khorne, the god of war and bloodshed, Tzeentch, the god of change and schemes, and Slaanesh, which is the god of hedonism and excess. So these all changed them in different ways. Like the Death Guard became bloated plague carriers. The Emperor's Children mutated into sensation-addicted, grotesque beings that were a weird reflection of their former perfection. That did not intend to rhyme, but it did. The Emperor's Children, the Thousand Sons, they became automatons of dust animated by sorceress will. There's a whole story behind that. It's called the Rubric of Ahriman. We'll probably do an episode about it. And the World Eaters degenerated into berserkers barely capable of strategy. But the Chaos Space Marines themselves, these were the transhuman warriors, ancient transhuman warriors, armed with the best gear available from the Imperium at the time. They endure in ways that are impossible for ordinary mortals to do so. They are just so tough and so determined that they are able to make life work within the Eye of Terror. That's not to say there aren't mortals. There are regular people too. In fact, some of these demon worlds have human populations.
Yeah. Who else? If you don't have somebody to corrupt and oppress, are you in chaos at that point?
I mean, we don't know much about life on the demon worlds, but we know that life exists. That's about the most I can say. So on top of all this, there's also the temporal distortions. So Space Marines that were created 10,000 years ago, they're still around. They haven't turned to dust or anything. Well, unless they're Thousand Sons. They haven't turned to dust. The unpredictability of time passage within the Eye is one of its most disorienting and strangely terrifying properties, because you might emerge from the Eye within seconds of entering, or you might emerge 10,000 years later. It's just a weird thing.
No, it's funny you bring that one up, because having run many games of 40K role playing games, most of them, if not all, authored by Ross Watson, is I love playing around with time travel in the war. I think it's freaking great, but also it's when when it happens in a book, when I'm like reading it in a novel or whatever, I'm like, oh dear. It's like, because to your point, I mean, you could travel forward, backwards, sideways. I don't think anybody's done sideways. I don't think there's any. Yeah, if they have, I don't think we've written anything about parallel dimensions. But
they do exist. There are alternate dimensions. The Necrots have several pocket dimensions actually that they use to store things in. For example, and we know like there's the Flayer dimension, which is where
right. Yeah.
the Necron Flayers come from, and that's where they live. So yeah, there are alternate dimensions, but they tend to be small and
weird,
generally very disconnected. Like they're not really a thing you need to worry about that much. Let's just put it that way. We got a comment from Wes Luce here. I just saw. I wanted to comment on. Wesley said, "1,000 Suns, and a chapter is supposed to only have 1,000 Marines." Now just see the link there. Okay, just to be clear, the 1,000 Suns is a name that is not literal. There are far more than 1,000 Space Marines in the 1,000 Suns Legion. They're called the 1,000 Suns for very different. We'll have to do a whole episode on the 1,000 Suns at some point in the future. They're really fascinating, and especially pre-heresy, they were awesome. So yeah, it's a symbolic meaning. It's not a literal one. All right, so the Eye of Terror is not unified. Shocking for groups allied with Chaos. Yeah. The Traitor Legions, the Dark Mechanicum, the Demon Princes, and independent warlords of all kinds, including mortal renegades, they're in a state of constant, savage internal warfare. Resources are scarce, and that means slaves, raw materials, territory. They're all contested for various reasons. And shortly before the Horus Heresy, shortly after the Horus Heresy, there was a thing called the Slave Wars erupted within the Eye of Terror, where the Emperor's Children launched a devastating surprise attack on the Sons of Horus fortress world of Malium, which is what you were talking about. Malium, which became the home of the Black Legion and Abaddon. And on this world, the Emperor's Children, they desecrated the body of Horus, which had been brought back after the Siege of Terra. And Fabius Bile tried to clone him to restore Chaos to its former momentum. This was all a thing that occurred in the Eye of Terror. We should talk about that at length in the future. When we do an episode on Abaddon, I'm sure we'll probably have a long discussion about that.
And we got at least one. I'm sorry, keep going.
No, please continue.
I was going to say, we got at least one craft world in the Eye of Terror.
Altansar?
Ilkaith?
Or Ilkaith, okay. Yeah.
Because they're Corsairs definitely in the Eye of Terror too. I'm not sure why they want to, but sure.
Oh well, Eldari Corsairs are a special type of daredevil. They are the absolute extreme sports enthusiasts of the Eldari, because they run around with the least protection from Slaanesh of all the different types of Eldar.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Corsairs are like, YOLO, and they just go to places because they can, because they're hyped up on all these really strong emotions, and they don't have a discipline to lock it down like the craft worlders do, and they don't have a culture to give them other outlets like the Drukhari or the Exodites or the Harlequins. So the Corsairs are like, fuck it, let's go risk our souls. Let's go places that other Eldari won't dare go. So,
yeah, one of the things I appreciate about the Ilkaith is I remember reading that they're live in the Eye of Terror, and they got a hate on for chaos in a big way, and they're just like sworn an oath to eradicate all chaos. So why not go to where they live? And I was like, that's that's pretty solid motivation.
Okay, so my understanding is that Altansar was the only craft world in the Eye of Terror. The others were close by; they were near. But Altansar was a craft world. It survived the fall.
It is close. I'm sorry, I thought it was in there.
No, Altansar was actually in it though.
Yeah,
Altansar was a craft world that survived the fall of the Eldar, but it was caught within the energies of the Eye of Terror and swallowed within the warp within about 500 years of the fall. So, I mean, it was trying to get out of the blast radius and just couldn't quite get there. So 500 years after the fall would have been during the Great Crusade. So this is after humanity's left Earth and is out there roaming the galaxy. That's, well, under the Emperor, I should say. Anyway, so yeah, Altansar has been within the Eye of Terror for almost 10,000 years, and the only known escapee is the Phoenix Lord Malgan Ra. We have a whole episode on the Phoenix Lords if you want to find out who they are. They're basically demigod-like saints, battle saints, if you will, of the Eldari people. They all represent different aspects of their war god, Caleb and Chicane. And there's not much else we know about Altansar, really, to say, except that, you know, it's considered a cursed place by the Eldari. Ilkaith is very close to the Eye of Terror. It's obsessed with fighting chaos. It is known to ally with the Drukhari, the Dark Eldar, and even humans to prosecute an anti-chaos crusade of a kind. They are amongst the most anti-chaos Eldari.
Yeah, those are the ones I was focusing on. I was thinking of because I mean, you got to have a lot of hate on to be just like I will ally with anybody. We'll dip in there, kill a lot of chaos.
Yeah, according to lore, and this is old lore, so take it with a giant grain of salt. But according to old lore, Malgan Ra actually guided that craft world out. That Altansar escaped.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So, or at least the people of Altansar did. So it's old lore. I wouldn't necessarily put a lot of faith in that. Although Rush says here, he says, did Malgan Ra escape or was he let out? Good point. There's also craft world Imilok, which is close to the Eye of Terror. Craft world Ibrasil, which they focus on expeditions to the Crone worlds. And then there's Ulthway, which is the other craft world that's very, very close to the Eye of Terror. Home of Eldred Ulthuran. We have a whole episode on Eldred Ulthuran, so go check that out. Anyway, that is the Eldari part of it. We talked about the slave wars. The Eye of Terror does get visitors. It does get a supply of new residents. Does that shock you, Ethan?
No, you said they got merchants.
So we know the Eldari go there regularly, okay? But there's also refugees and criminals. Anybody who's tired of living under the Imperium is like, well, screw you guys. I'm going to the Eye of Terror.
Yeah, I mean, and it does. It's you got heretics that are, you know, so desperate to get away that they're willing to go there. And you mentioned that, you know, the traitor legions that are not necessarily Chaos Space Marines as well. I mean, it's if you're trying to stay away from, you know, the Empire, it's probably a great place, to your point, to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there.
Unsurprisingly, a lot of these people are mutants or persecuted psychers, because life in the Imperium for a psyker can be really shitty. Same is true for mutants. If you're a heretical cultist, of course, this is more like a religious pilgrimage for you. I'm sure there have been numerous vessels that are like, we are going to see the Chaos Gods, hallelujah, and then they vanish into the Eye of Terror. And you've got ambitious mercenaries and the occasional rogue trader who thinks it's a good idea to go where, you know, kind of like the Corsairs, I'm going to do what no one else has ever done. It's a very rogue trader kind of thing. They are all welcomed to various degrees by the forces of chaos, provided that these refugees / visitors / opportunists can survive long enough to be useful. Now, what kind of person would you imagine would look at the Eye of Terror and go, that's a better place to live than the Imperium?
Imagine somebody, well, you said, like outlaw psychers and stuff, people who have, suffered a lot at the hands of the Empire, or the Imperium, really, sorry. And, I get that. As an old punk, I absolutely get that. Like, yeah, there are days where you're just like, look, you gotta pick something, and it's gotta be better than what I'm going through. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. But yeah, I mean, and like you said, the persecuted psychers, for they didn't join the Big Daddy's okay psycher team, so.
There are many reasons why you might not want to join Team Imperium.
Yeah.
And the Eye of Terror is one of the places you can go where you can absolutely be guaranteed you're not going to be under Imperial rule. Again, very questionable whether that's a good idea, but, there it is.
So, yeah, good question in the chat is how would Imperials even make it into the Eye of Terror? So,
there's a stable route in and out. It is called the Cadian Gates. I should say. There was a stable route in and out. And so traffic in and out of the Eye of Terror usually used the Cadian Gate to transit, because it was one of the few ways that you wouldn't get torn apart by warp storms to enter this region and fly around. We did an episode not that long ago about the fall of Cadia. And Cadia is it is a very important planet to the Cadian Gate. And I'll just briefly go over that. The perimeter of the Eye Terror is surrounded by these violent warp storms, and they basically make a barrier that prevents escape and easy ways in. Okay. The single reliable opening in this barrier was the Cadian Gate, which was a stable corridor of real space. This was not created by accident. This was actually due to the pylons of the Necrons that were on Cadia millions of years before. And the planet of Cadia sits right in the mouth of this passage. The Imperium transformed it into a fortress world, one of the most fortified worlds in the entire galaxy. Every citizen on Cadia was raised as a soldier. Every structure was a potential fortress. When you were like 10 years old on Cadia, the game you played was let's carry ammo to the front line. That's how, the kids on Cadia were raised. One of the traditions from the Minkalesk books that is really cool is when a Cadian reaches a certain age, they would lift them up and show them the Eye of Terror in the sky. And they would say, what do we say to the Eye of Terror? And then the kid will say, you will never win. We will always oppose you. The Cadians, strong people. Very strong people.
Planet broke before the guard did.
That's right.
That's right. Such a good quote. Like just absolutely one of the best.
Yeah, we talked about that in our episode about the fall of Cadia, how that has become a rallying cry for Astra Militarum fans, which I really love. Another super chat from Ricky Chapman. We had pools of pestilence with gibbet cages for invaders or prisoners, hanging above them, nurgling, swinging from the cages, pooping and popping on them, slowly corrupting them or liquefying them into slugs. Okay, I have often said that I kind of wish I had been in some of Ricky Chapman's games. I think this is the one campaign I could skip. I mean, all of his games sound awesome. This one sounds awesome, but in like a particular way. That's a very vivid visual there, Ricky Chapman. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gross. 40K can get very gross, especially with Nurgle. Nurgle and Slaanesh can get extremely gross. Yeah, this is a... Sebastian Muller says, man, kids, what do we say to the Eye of Terror? The kids, Fuck you.
That's solid.
Yeah, that's solid. It's about right. So the significance of Cadia was not just military, but it was also cosmological. The pylons suppressed the Eye of Terror's growth. It kept the warp at bay and made the Cadian Gate navigable. Without the pylons, the Eye of Terror would expand, and this did happen. Abaddon the Despoiler, who has named himself the War Master of Chaos, he understood this to a much more profound level than most, and this was the purpose of all of his Black Crusades, was to destroy the pylon network. Well, not all of the Black Crusades, most of the Black Crusades. This was his purpose. This was how do I put this? They were not random rampages, but they were a calculated strategic program that he called the Crimson Path. So he spent Abaddon Abaddon. Who's Abaddon? Let's break this down. Do you want to answer that question? Who's Abaddon?
I mean, aside from the War Master of Chaos,
right?
Yeah, it's. Let me refresh.
Well, he used to be the first captain of the Sons of Horus.
The Sons of Horus, yeah. He was so like, and when it was over with, he was last man standing.
He was one of the last remnants of what was called the Mournival, which was Horus's closest advisors. And so Abaddon had the stature within the Legion to be able to say, okay, everybody follow me, because he was the closest one to Horus prior to the Siege of Terror. And Abaddon led his legion, the Sons of Horus, into the Eye of Terror, where he renamed them the Black Legion and absorbed many other Chaos Warbands into a massive force. The Abaddon commands the largest group of Chaos Space Marines that is known. It is an enormous army that he commands. So he spent 2 centuries rebuilding the Legion into the Black Legion, and then he basically took over as the War Master of Chaos, and then he started leading these Black Crusades. And his first Black Crusade he led out to he went and got his demon sword, Drachnian, which is the echo of the first murder. It's a big thing in the Dan Abnett novels, so you know. The second Black Crusade, I'm not going to go through all the Black Crusades. The 13th one is the most important one. This is when he destroyed Cadia, and prior to this, many of the other Black Crusades were meant to destroy pylons as part of this network. Cadia was the last one that he needed to destroy, and the only ones left in the galaxy were the ones on Cadia. We have a whole episode about the fall of Cadia. Go there if you want to learn more. But essentially, there was a massive Black Crusade that emerged from the Eye of Terror, led by Abaddon, and they attacked Cadia and they destroyed the entire world. They actually shattered the planet. They did not shatter the Defenders, as Brian pointed out, as Ethan pointed out. The Defenders did not break. They just died when their world had died. So
which is why I see lots and lots of people play Cadians now.
Well, Cadians are also the poster faction for the Asteroid Maltara. There's really them and the Kriegs, the Death Corps Krieg. I think are the only available models these days, right?
Yeah, the last I checked, and visually they're both interesting. The Cadians all look like it's an army of Rambos. If you're old enough to remember the first.
Oh no, you're thinking Catachans.
Oh, I'm thinking Catachans. Oh yeah, no,
Vietnam era.
Yeah, no, the Cadians. Different ones. Yeah, but yeah, in the case of they're visually interesting to look at, and the Krieg are, they got gas masks. They live on a hell planet. And they ride horses with gas masks, which is the most World War I thing. Like if you've never seen a picture of a horse with a gas mask on in World War I, go look it up.
They're very World War I French. inspired.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so the Abaddon basically crashed a Blackstone fortress into the planet of Cadia, which shattered it, destroyed all the pylons. A Blackstone fortress is a small moon-sized ship/weapon from the War in Heaven. I'm not going to. There's a lot more. It's a lot more involved than that, but I'm not going to get into it. So, with the pylons gone, the Eye of Terror underwent a catastrophic expansion. This was called the Great Rift, or the Cicatrix Maledictum. Now, this is probably new to you, Ethan. This is from 2017, 2018 lore.
What, when the eye split? No, that's where you set most of the stuff for Wrath and Glory.
That's okay. So you do so. Wrath of Glory does reflect that. So if you've read Wrath of Glory, you're up to speed.
Yeah.
Basically, the destruction of the final functioning pylon network triggered a cascade effect of staggering scale. The Eye of Terror, no longer constrained, did not merely expand, it tore the entire galaxy in two. A titanic warp rift, which was called the Cicatrix Maledictum, or the Great Rift, ripped open from the Eye in the Galactic West all the way down to the Hadex Anomaly, which I mentioned earlier in this show, in the Eastern Fringe, which bisects the Milky Way galaxy almost entirely in two. I think, God, there's a. I should actually bring up a map. There's a map of the Imperium we can see, where we can actually see the where the Great Rift expands.
Yeah, I was looking for it myself.
So it's a big deal, is what I'm trying to get across. That's the old map. I need the new map.
And it was also when they bounced Papa Smurf back into reality, and then all of a sudden we were getting.
So when you say Papa Smurf, you mean Rabute Gilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the image up. I'm going to put it on the screen now.
No offense to any Ultramarine players out there.
So as you can see, it spreads from the Eye of Terror all the way down to the Hadex Anomaly. The Calixus sector is actually slightly northwest of the Eye of Terror. So the Calixus sector was not actually hit by the Great Rift, but the Hadex Anomaly was, and that is directly in the Jericho Reach. So bad news for the Jericho Reach. They're basically done. Pretty fun stuff. Anyway, you can see the spread of this thing. By the way, the center piece there is the Maelstrom, which is another massive warp storm, the second biggest one in the galaxy prior to the opening of the Great Rift. This leads to the northernmost part of the galaxy being called the Imperium Nihilus, which is the part that's where everything's going very, very poorly because they can't see the Astronomicon, they can't travel. They're under constant attack. And then the southern part is called the Imperium Sanctus, which is where things generally work the way they did before the Great Rift. But stuff is bad all over, it's fair to say. Do you see anything of note on this map you'd like to talk about, Ethan?
Yeah, because I can't see it. I know that I ran a bunch of stuff down in Segmentum Tempestus. That's always fun.
The Tempestus segmentum, yeah. That's down to the south, yeah. There were other warp storms that emerged in the wake. You can see one here called the Siren Storm. There's one over here called the Scourge Stars. There's one.
Scourge Stars were sort of on the nose, but I really liked that quite a bit.
The Malefactus up in the northeast by the Ghoul Stars. That's actually really cool. I like that one. The Gothic sector got almost completely. There's a lot of warp storms going on there too, which is very, very bad. Cadia and Agrippina were both very important worlds that got swallowed by the Eye. And of course, the most recent lore is taking place on Armageddon, which is, I think, can't remember exactly where that is, but I believe it's in the Tempestus. I could be wrong.
You got the Caligari sector too.
The names are great. Love them.
Yeah.
Nephilim sector, Charodon sector, Reductus sector, the Veiled region. A lot of great spots on this map. So that is the Great Rift, and the origin of the Great Rift, of course, as we talked about, is the Eye of Terror. The Great Rift is not a separate entity from the Eye of Terror. It is the Eye of Terror. It's just expanded beyond all previous containment and bleeding uncontrollably across the galaxy. It is. There are forces that are trying to close it. It seems like reality itself is attempting to reject this intrusion of the warp. But the psychic energy of Slaanesh's birth and the trillions of people who worship chaos, the natural reactions of reality is not enough to overcome it. It just, or that's what it seems like so far. So it's a wound that is trying to heal, but is just so awfully separating that it will not heal. Does that make sense to you, Ethan?
Mm-hmm. There was a question. What is the strait that is easy to get to from the Shadow Spear box?
The chefs. Oh, I think there is a region, a place to cross, is what he's asking. I think.
Yeah.
Is that Vigilus?
Yeah, I was looking for it and I couldn't.
I'm going to look that up. I know there's a name for it. It is. God, this was important too because I remember researching it for Wrath of Glory. Because originally we wanted to be near it. The Nachmund Gauntlet. That's it. The Nachmund Gauntlet. That's a corridor of navigatable space between the Eye of Terror, so you could transfer between the two Imperiums. Barely navigable. It's extremely difficult. Vigilus is also. Vigilus is in the Nachmund Gauntlet. Vigilus is a world that is kind of like the Cadian Gate. It sits in this crucial corridor and became a war zone. It is possible there are other places to cross, but the Nachmund Gauntlet is the key and most dependable way to cross between the two. That's right. Nachmund Gauntlet and Vigilus. I was thinking Vigilus. I wanted to say Vigilus. So, yeah, there you go. That's a good question. Thank you, Rush, for bringing that up. I believe I was going to get there, but I just haven't gotten to it quite yet. We talked about the Abyssal Crusade. We talked about the Craft World of Altensar. We talked about the temporal anomalies. So you're an experienced game master, Ethan. If you were running a game where we were entering the Eye of Terror or near the Great Rift, and you wanted to play around with some weird temporal anomalies, how would you do it?
How would I do it from a technical standpoint, or what kind of story am I going to tell?
Column A, column B. How about a little of both?
All right. From a technical standpoint, it's all very hand-wavy because it's just space magic. So everything in 40K is just space magic. But I would probably take them back to and dump them out somewhere in the past where we don't know who the good guys were, like who saved the day, but somebody saved the day, and I'd make them the person who saved the day, the team that saved the day. Or if it didn't exist, I would establish that in lore probably 8 games ahead of time, 8 to 10 sessions ahead of time, and then have them go, hey, that's that thing we heard about where, wait a minute, and nobody knows who saved the day. Crap, we're here in 10,000 years in the past. Yeah. I like to give my players a lot of agency. I want to see what they're gonna do, but I will, and I'm blessed with a very smart game group. So there's at least 2 people at the table that will have remembered that I mentioned this place, or they'll pick up their murder hobo journal that my wife bought for everybody to keep notes in, and
That's awesome that your wife bought them all journals. I love that.
My wife does all kinds. Every time we start a new game, she's like handing out new dice. She's giving people journals. She's she's the den mother of our gaming group.
Yeah, I should mention actually, Ethan's wife is Jen Polly. She runs Geek Forge, and Geek it's the Geek Forge, right? That's what it's called.
Yep, the Geek Forge.
The Geek.org. The geekforge.org is her website. I have a Rogue Trader coat that she made for me that is fantastic. So if you're looking for great cosplay accessories, especially for Warhammer, I would say reach out to the Geek Forge, reach out to Jen, because she knows her stuff. She's very, very good. And so the Eye of Terror is now no longer simply a distant threat lurking at the galaxy's edge. It is now not quite everywhere, but it's a hell of a lot bigger than it used to be. It's become an open wound across the entire Milky Way. The chaos forces within are no longer just raiding parties. They are full on launching war campaigns. Perturabo has launched what called the Reign of Iron, which is one of the more recent ones in lore, which we need to talk about. And he's methodically fortifying all the worlds around where the Cadian Gate used to be to establish a permanent chaos empire in real space, rather than using the Eye as a staging area, just as one example. The Cadian Gate as a bottleneck is gone. That's not going to slow down anything anymore. And they don't even need to use the Cadian Gate anymore at all. The Chaos Forces can just emerge. They can just come out. The remaining Imperial bastions and Forge worlds and strongholds, they still fight in that region, not because they conceal the Eye, but just to deny Chaos uncontested control of the surrounding sectors. So here's a question for you, Ethan. With all the things I've said, with all the stuff that you've learned, and all of your knowledge of 40K, can the Eye of Terror be closed?
Are we talking about the Rift first, getting back to normal size, or just closing the Eye of Terror in general?
Either one.
It's a question of whether it can or will. So long as it exists, there's story to be told. But if there is, I don't know the answer to how to do it. I mean, it's functionally, like you said, I mean, it's just one giant warp storm. Now it's ripped in half. Silent King has to be there. Iron Warriors versus Black Legion. Okay.
Yeah, the Silent King could intervene. So we know, according to what we know, and again, this giant grain of salt, because some of this is from very biased sources, but according to what we know, the Necrons have the technology to seal chaos away, or warp, seal the warp away from real space. And even a partially active network of pylons on Cadia ranked the Eye of Terror, threatened to close it forever. So there seems to be a way to do it. You would just need to get the Necrons involved. And whether or not they want to get involved is like a really big question, because most of their civilization is asleep, although they are starting to wake up more and more. The Silent King is definitely aware of this issue, and maybe he has a level of authority over the Necrons that very few others, probably no one else does, frankly. So if the Silent King was to get involved, he might possibly be able to set up something that could close or reduce or shrink the Great Rift and or the Eye of Terror altogether.
And his motivation would be if the chaos keeps spreading, there's no one to serve our greatness.
Well, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to say it's very likely that this could only happen if you could get a number of different factions to work together, and that's very difficult in Warhammer 40K. But the Necrons would be the most important one to get involved. So the Eye of Terror, prior to the Great Rift, the Eye of Terror was a little more narratively important. Now it's just sort of a historical note for the Great Rift. But it was, at a literal level, a military and cosmological threat. It was the largest concentration of chaos forces in the galaxy. It was the origin point of every Black Crusade. It was the source of the Great Rift that redefined the setting, if you will. At a thematic level, it was a symbol of the franchise's core philosophy. Civilizations carry within them the seed of their own destruction, because it was the home of the Eldari Dominion before that fell, and now,
Right.
So it symbolically became the home of the Chaos Space Marines, who were also the seed of the Imperium's destruction, if you will.
And I just personal opinion and bias here that it's not worth it. You guys can decide whether or not it's worth anything. Is I felt like the reason we kept telling Horus Heresy stories is because the current timeline was extraordinarily stagnant, and this mixed it up. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
Papa Smurf comes back, and look, like I've spent years dealing with people playing the Ultramarines, and me just going, I can't play Dark Angels, and they're like, oh, Dark Angels. So,
The light return too. You know that.
Yeah. I mean, they started waking up. I'm like, you guys popping up like daisies now. One of you does it, and now it's just but I feel like there's more story to tell with that than being in a stagnant universe that never changes, and possibly because when the game started, it didn't have a whole lot of lore, and when it finally got the lore, we're stuck forever in 40K. That the time's not moving forward. Nothing new is happening. It's the same old battles. The names and places change, right? And and now, and I know people don't like the Primaris, or at least like 50% of the people don't like the Primaris and stuff. But like you're showing me new things I haven't seen before, and you've got an opportunity, and they're making miniatures of all the Chaos Lords too, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're putting that at the table now, are we? All right, fine. Poor Sanguinius, yeah. What? I mean, dude died. I mean, what else? Oh, are we poor Sanguinius because he's not going to come back, or?
Well, I did an episode on how he could come back, but as part of that episode, I was saying he shouldn't come back. So yeah, the Eye of Terror. I mean, it is a big part of why the setting is so grimdark, but it's also a big part of why, as you say, the setting has now seems like it has more stakes and more dynamic aspects to it that lever it out of a place where it was kind of stuck, and is now more exciting and more engaging than ever before.
Yeah, no, I mean, it honestly, this change put me in exactly the place I was in 89, 1990, when the two books showed up in the shop. One was Rogue Trader, the other was Shadowrun. And we wore both of them out.
Nice.
Yeah, I stepped away from 40K because I always wanted the clock to hit the new year, and now we're in a place where we have stuff that is new.
Yeah, if you want to address a comment, you can actually just click on it and it should show up.
Oh. I didn't want to abuse my power as guest co-host.
I'm giving you the power. By the power of Grayskull, you have the power.
Y'all are in trouble now.
So there's one more thing I want to say about the Eye of Terror that I think is really important, and that is it is a reflection of a lot of the core elements of the setting. The Eldari, their beauty and their power made them capable of anything, including literally birthing a god. and that god's birth undid everything that they had built. The traitor legions, who were the finest warriors that humanity ever created, they now lurk in the shadows for eternity, unable to die, but equally unable to truly live. It's probably a good way to put it. The Eye of Terror is not just a place where the bad guys come from, or enemies come from, I guess I should say, because again, there's no good guys in 40K. But it is a mirror that is held up to every faction in the setting, and it's a reminder that power, unchecked, becomes its own apocalypse, which I like.
I like the idea of the Eye of Terror being a dark mirror held up to the rest of the galaxy. That's a solid take, because and also if you want to, if you don't like the Imperium and you do want to have weird rituals, plague friends and whatever, and go live in the Eye of Terror, that now it has enough lore around it to be a, I won't say fun, but an interesting place to set a story.
One of the things that makes me wonder the most about the Eye of Terror is why it was the seat of power for the Eldari Dominion in the first place, if it was also something that was torn open during the War in Heaven. Did the Eldari settle that region because they knew it was strong with the Immaterium, and they being psychic race, they wanted to utilize that? Was it because they were maybe out of good intentions, they wanted to safeguard this part of the galaxy that had been torn open? Who tore it open? Was it the old ones? I'm assuming it would have been. There's a lot of questions about that, about why the Eldari settled there in the first place.
Yeah, and that's the way I like my Eldari, is nice and mysterious. And if an Eldari doesn't say, "I'm sorry, you're not cleared for that information," I'm talking to the wrong Eldari.
They are perfidious and deceitful, so anything they say, you should probably not believe anyway. But
right. Tell me more about this. I tried clicking on it. It's not doing it.
Which one is it?
The most recent one. And the Tau even made their own mini Eye of Terror.
Yeah, Mornington Crescent. Talking about the Tau making their own mini Eye of Terror. I'd have to do some research on that to tell you more about that. I think that's part of the Fourth Sphere expansion, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look that up. But Eason, would you like to hear about some of the weird fan theories regarding the Eye of Terror?
I would love for you to tell me some fan theories, because I don't know any. The only fan theories I've got is me, and mine aren't particularly interesting. Well, I already said what mine was. It's just, it was more to drive the story forward, to allow us to have a story that as was so well put, that we clicked the new year, and it felt like time and the story was moving forward instead of continually looking at the past.
Russia's comment here says maybe it was the climactic battle of the War in Heaven. I mean, that would would actually make a lot of sense.
That would be super cool.
But that also, good.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, so it's your A-bomb, right? It's the whatever weapon was used to end the War in Heaven, split reality in half.
Well, one of the versions of the history of the War in Heaven says that the old ones were consumed by the enslavers, which is a warp, a creature of the warp. It's a weird jellyfish-like Xenos being that comes out and creates miniature warp gates out of psychers in a body horror Cronenbergian sort of way.
Of course they are.
Yeah, they're devastating to deal with. So maybe, who knows? But anyway, so one of the first fan theories that I'd like to talk about is definitely one that is not true, but is still fun. And for many, many years, it was a popular idea that the old world, the world of Warhammer Fantasy, was a planet inside or somehow attached to the Eye of Terror, surrounded by warp storms, which is why nobody could get to it. Also, Sigmar was one of the lost Primarchs, was one of the old fan theories. Both of these theories are no longer true.
Sad because that Sigmar being one of the lost Primarchs would be freaking great. I'd eat that up.
I did too. When I was a fan, and prior to 2004, when I was just like super into it, and they hadn't yet separated the two settings completely, I was very much in favor of this idea. I was very much of the idea of like, oh yeah, the Warhammer world totally exists somewhere in 40k, and Sigmar is totally a lost Primarch. That was always on my mind. But then they went and wrote the books. Graham McNeil wrote the books about Sigmar, where he's definitely not a Primarch. And I was like, okay, well, there goes that.
BT Dubs, not a Primarch, on page 1, and then move on.
Rush says, it's a spell gone wrong to throw the Krorks across the galaxy to save themselves from a broken betrayal. Now, that's a hell of a theory. If the Krorks created the Eye of Terror, that actually... wow. That's a pretty good idea, actually. I dig that. Because the Krorks were the race that became the Orcs. They devolved into the Orcs. So they would have had very strong Psykers. And they were definitely part of the War in Heaven. So that's wild. I kind of love that idea, actually, Rush. That's a good one. There was old material in the Realms of Chaos books from the 80s that mentioned a fantasy world encircled by warp storms. So people connected that to the Eye after the fact. It was never official canon, but it was just a very persistent fan theory that was supported by stuff in the Realm of Chaos books. The stuff in the Realm of Chaos books, by the way, is hilarious. It's funny. It's fascinating. It's horrifying. Go check out the Realms of Chaos books if you ever get a chance. They are wild. And Brian Ansell at his absolute best. His drug-fueled best. I don't know. I know I said that out loud. I'm sorry, but I don't know for a fact that Brian Ansell was experimenting with substances. I don't know that. I suspect it. I think that it may have been true. I don't know. I don't know Brian Ansell. Never met the man. I'm sure he was great. If anybody out there knows for sure, please tell me. But that's my personal thinking is that he was experimenting with a few substances while he was working on this.
Who among us has not? But he among us who has not cast the first bolter.
So yeah, the idea of Sigmar being a Primarch, it was really fun, but I think it does kind of undermine the idea of a self-made God Emperor down to just another lab-grown demigod. So I can understand why some people are like, no, Sigmar should never have been a Primarch, and that's a totally separate thing. I get it. No big deal. Morty Cresta says Nagash is a lost Primarch. Woo! That's a crazy thought. So here's a thought. Here's a question for you, Ethan. What lies at the center of the Eye of Terror? What's actually there?
I want to say like a jelly filling. That's the. I mean, I always kind of assumed it was a black hole, but but maybe not. So.
Well, some speculate that it is a literal gateway to the deepest areas of the warp, rather than a mixed combination of the material world and the immaterium. But there is a funny thing. A lot of fans do tend to call this, whatever it is, the Bissos. They tend to call it Slaanesh's starfish. Now, what did you say? When I told you about the topic of this episode? What did you call the Eye of Terror?
Oh yeah, Chaos is butthole.
Yeah. So calling it Slaanesh Starfish, calling it the butthole of chaos. I mean,
I just sit there and thought that's basically what I said. I deserved everything I'm going to get out of this competition.
Oh, Ethan, you just barely know what it's like to be a Lorebeard. At least you are equipped. You have the correct facial hair to be a Lorebeard. So
yeah. My lore is old and unused mostly unused because I don't have anybody to play with, and except the role playing games, and most of my crew is much more interested in me running Prowlers and Paragons or something like that.
Well, I'm not going to offer you too much sympathy because you have a gaming group that meets weekly, and I am deeply jealous of that.
Okay, I'm going to make everybody on here mad. It is a group that meets weekly, and if everybody showed up every week, I'd have 10 people at the table.
Damn. All right, another question for you, Ethan. Did Abaddon intend to unleash the Eye, or was his true goal something else entirely?
Okay, yeah, all right. Yes, yes, he did. He absolutely did. Because Abaddon's one of those guys that's just like he's always got to move, right? And it's like, what created a, and I'm gonna go even farther down this you know, I won't go say fairy tale, but this idea is that um, he had to flee the Imperium that he knew because he picked wrong side and his daddy just got whacked by other daddy, and so now he's going to claim his spot, and he's going to build that dark mirror. He's going to build that mirror of the Imperium. And so where can he do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe, but I got me a Chaos Lord on a few Chaos Lords on speed dial. Is there a way to open a pathway to where people can live in pure chaos? That's my theory.
Hmm. Well, it does seem the idea they did retcon all of his previous Black Crusades as being part of a goal, the Crimson
Right.
Path.
Right.
The novels seem to indicate that the Crimson Path was meant to get him to Terra, and that destroying Cadia and opening the Eye of Terror was an unintended consequence of this. But as you say, it's difficult to look into the mind of a being like Abaddon, who's been around for 10,000 years, who is essentially a demigod because he's powered up by chaos and was, a first captain under Horus. So yeah, he thinks very differently than you and I do. So it's very possible that this was part of a long plan, and that destroying Cadia, while not necessarily his first or most primary goal, he adapted to the conditions. Was like, okay, well, this will get me closer to where I want to be.
Correct.
And maybe that's the result there. But yeah, one of the fan theories is that Abaddon knew all along that the Eye of Terror was the key, and that this was his plan because he was destroying all the pylons prior to the fall of Cadia. Yeah. Now, we did mention that there are other warp scars. There's the Maelstrom, right? Which was a smaller version of the Eye of Terror. And we showed you that map where there were a lot of other little warp storms that popped up in the aftermath of the Great Rift opening. So this, to me, suggests that the War in Heaven involved weapons or battles or events that created these weak spots between reality.
Bingo. That's exactly where. Yeah, that's same theory. Is that was the War in Heaven using the warp as a weapon, like tearing out holes of oh, your house is over there. Okay, now you live in hell, or you don't live in hell because the planet got destroyed. I think that's absolutely what was going on.
Well, I kind of like the idea that the Rush suggested that maybe it was the Krorks who did it, and
just like pissed off, and they like did it, and then went off and devolved into orcs.
Well, possibly. I mean, we are wildly speculating at this point. To be super clear,
I'm all about wild speculation.
Yeah, Ethan and I do not know the facts. We are looking at what we know, and we're speculating on what may have been. So just to be clear, this is not in any codex. It's not in any rule book, but it's possible that the Krorks' involvement in the War in Heaven unleashed some kind of massive warp disruption, and it's very possible that same warp disruption, the use of those weapons, may have been the catalyst for their species to devolve from the Krorks into the Orcs. Now, don't ask me like, what the specifics of that are, but something had to happen to cause the Krorks to devolve. Something had to happen to create these warp scars. I'm just connecting a couple of dots here and saying,
what if there's a single
right
cause? Interesting.
I'm just connecting some dots. This isn't necessarily true, but it's a fascinating idea. It's a fan theory that I haven't seen out there, so I'm kind of excited to create a brand new fan theory. I like it.
Yeah, y'all, everybody on here, go out and spread this fan theory and claim that you came up with it.
There you go.
Because what I want is a schism. I want people go, no, I came up with it. No, I did. No, Ross Watson did. Who?
Get a lot of fighting on the internet. That's what we want out of this. There we go.
We don't have enough. We need more.
Oh my God. Here's a question for you, Ethan. How mixed is the reality within the Eye of Terror?
What's my theory on that?
So lore tells us that the further you are towards the center, the more you are similar to the warp itself.
Right.
And the further away you are, the less. So is it like a tornado? Is it dangerous at the edge and calmer in the middle? Is it like a pupil in the eye? Is it concentrated more near the center? Like what's?
Well, okay. Well, they said the closer you get to the center, the more. But I think you make I think the most interesting thing about it is, so the thing is, the other thing about the Eye of Terror is it certainly reminds me of like a supermassive black hole. Like, it's because it spins. There's obviously something that made it, there's whether it's psychic gravity or actual freaking gravity at the center of it, it feels like a thing that has been, either it got puked out of this black hole, which, or it is, circling one. And like a supermassive hole at the center of a galaxy is not a particularly new theory, even from a science perspective. But is it mixed? Was that the question?
Yeah. Well, how mixed is it?
How mixed is it?
Yeah.
All right. If you'll allow me to use some degree of science in here.
How dare you?
Yeah. See, so it's zero amount mixed in the middle, and it's zero amount, and it's probably more on the edge where it's actually touching something that is not the Eye of Terror, right? And then as you go in, it's probably less mixed and more chaosy the closer you get to the center.
Possibly. I like the analogy of a black hole because those definitely exist and they are horrifying. And in fact, other properties like Disney have proposed that black holes are essentially gateways to hell. This has happened. There's a movie called The Black Hole. Go watch it. It's really slow, but also kind of good. So
yeah, it's good, but please understand.
Yeah.
This is a movie made in the 70s. It wasn't Star Wars. Okay.
70s pacing. Yeah, it's 70s pacing to a fault, unfortunately.
Glacial is and that ending makes no sense. Anyway, but it's a fun ride. And also there's like a cowboy robot. It's weird. Anyway.
Oh yeah, Old Bob, voiced by Slim Pickens. Yeah, voiced by actual cowboy Slim Pickens.
Yeah.
So there is an interesting astronomical phenomena that is theoretical. We've never actually seen one. But there is an idea where you could potentially flip or reverse the idea of a black hole. It's called a white hole.
Mm-hmm.
And white holes would be a region of space-time from which matter and energy emerges from some other place. Black holes suck things in, white holes would push things out.
And the argument is that this is an argument for more than one dimension, is that there's a black hole somewhere that's sucking energy in, and then on the flip side of it, in a parallel dimension, another dimension that all of that energy, because matter, matter and energy can either be created or destroyed. They only change state. Is that energy comes blasting out of there?
So one possibility is that the Eye of Terror is a theoretical white hole, or was a white hole that was created during the War in Heaven or something along those lines. Or maybe, possibly, as you say, it is the exit point of a black hole elsewhere in the multiverse.
Right.
But that's, to be clear, this is like not exactly, it doesn't really fit with 40K's vibe because this is way too scientific.
Oh, yeah. No, they did. Yeah. Nope.
That is way too grounded in reality for 40K, which is the thing.
Yeah,
so
I'll break it to you, never getting chain swords. For a number of reasons. But anyway, yeah, if it is a white hole, it went through like by way of the dump, because it's dumping out stuff that's definitely not just energy. But well, I mean, maybe it is. It's psychic. Is the psychic can substratum of the of 40K energy? Can it be energy? Is it that's the next weird question to ask.
I mean, these things are all possible. But I have another question for you.
Sure.
So the Great Crusade left Terra around 250 years after the fall of the Eldar. When Slaanesh was born and the Eye of Terror was created, it basically calmed all the warp storms that had been raging throughout the galaxy.
Right.
And this is one of the reasons why humanity was unable to really leave Earth and go out and do things, because the warp storms were cutting all that shit off. It was called the Age of Strife. Right. And the Age of Strife comes to an end when Slaanesh is born and the Great Crusade begins. So, my question to you is this. Did the Emperor know about the Eye of Terror? And if he did he forbid anybody from talking about it or going there?
Yeah, that seems like a move he'd make. Like, well, okay, he's, this perpetual with superhuman, godlike powers and stuff. I figure he's got to know. And then on top of it, yeah, he's going to tell people not to tell. Like, that seems like his just primary move. Oh yeah, Perturabo knew. He always man.
So yeah, according to the novels of the Horus Heresy, Perturabo could always see the Eye of Terror when he from the moment of his birth onwards. No matter where he was, he could always be like, "There it is, I see it," and it was part of his.
That's a terrible power.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely Perturabo knew about it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I figured Biggie knew. I mean, it's just, and I mean, why else become an authoritarian shitlord that like tries to take over the whole universe with super soldier, monastery. I mean, create a bunch of priests that are also super soldiers that serve you. And well, I mean, unless it's just vanity, he had to be prepping for something. And he knew that chaos existed. He knew that psychic energy was a thing. I figure he had to know that there was a place where it was entering this universe. I mean, he's pretty much omnipotent from what we can tell anyway, or omniscient anyway, except when it came to his kids.
Games Workshop describes the Emperor as profoundly flawed, which is something I love to say. The Emperor is profoundly flawed.
Yeah. I mean, he made a lot of weird choices. I mean,
well, I also like to say he thinks in terms that are very different from you or I. We're thinking about tomorrow or next week or next month.
Right.
The Emperor is like 10, he's thinking thousands of years ahead, typically.
Well, yeah, and he's perpetual, right? I mean, that's what they call him, right?
As far as we know, yeah. As far as we know, he's a perpetual.
Yeah, and so he's probably, he's been around for a while, so, and you kind of figure that gives you you're going to take the long view if you know that you might not ever die.
True. Rush says, my theory is Quarks and Eldar fight, Eldar losing, so last throw of the dice, they scatter the Quarks and create the eye because Gork and Mork. On a walk signal bad. Oh, okay. That's why. He's saying he's on a walk. His signal is bad. Okay.
Okay. All right. I want to dig into the Mork and Gork thing because the other day somebody said something about on Reddit, the subreddit, and I was like, wait a minute, isn't one of them dead? Like, because there was a point at which I think it was third edition where one of either Mork or Gork was dead because you could only use whoever had the foot as the template. They didn't have the hand. The hand and the foot were in fantasy battle.
To my knowledge, they've never been declared dead. But
well, now there's apparently just one thing that's Gork and Mork.
No, they're two separate gods.
Okay,
but they are very much alike. One is cunning but brutal, and the other is brutal but cunning.
Yep.
I didn't make this up. That is the actual lore about Gork and Mork. Now, fun fact: this idea that Rush has here about the fight between this could have been the end of the fight between the Eldari and the Quarks. That's interesting. And Gork and Mork being gods, and we know the Eldari gods were around and doing things, and so possibly the gods being involved would be a thing. But here's an idea for you. We did say it would be interesting if the Quarks were the ones that created it, but the Eldari actually have technology that creates warp holes. They have wraith cannons that transport whatever they hit into the warp. They have other things. They have several pieces of technology that create rifts between reality and the warp, and they were around for millions of years. So it's far more likely that if there was a weapon that created warp rifts, it would have been Eldari to begin with. So I don't know. I feel like it has some connection to the War in Heaven because the Necrons are definitely aware of it and definitely wanted to do something about it. We know that the Eldari and the Quarks were active. We know the old ones were active. So it's probably one of those three and not the Necrons that did it. But it's interesting. It could have been the Eldari inherited all that warp tech from the old ones. We don't know. So, yeah. Basically, there's a lot. They do it. God, I want to say they have. The Imperium has weapons too. That they have vortex grenades, vortex missiles, the void shields themselves. There's a lot of tech that involves the warp. But I think, I think the Eldari may have been the ones to pull the trigger. Because there's very few orc things that touch upon the warp. Besides Weird Boys. The distortion cannons. That's what I was thinking of. The D cannons. The distortion
cannons. Yeah, I love those.
These they create a localized warp rupture. There's the there's the warp jump generators that the warp spiders use. I want to say they have D cannons on one of their aircraft too, right? That's like a wraith weapon of some kind.
Yeah.
I forget what those are called. But yeah, the distortion cannon is what I was thinking of right away. Actually, I ran an adventure in Deathwatch where the characters went to a world where all the stuff went that the D cannons shifted out of reality, and they just found these weirdly circular piles of stuff, and they're like, "What is all this?" Actually, I think it might have been where all the vortex missiles sent stuff, or vortex grenades. But anyway, the Imperium has stuff that touches on the warp too. It's rarer.
Those are thin on the ground. You gave away your age because you said warp missiles. I mean,
vortex missiles, vortex grenades.
Yeah, back in the days where we just like have a big black template on the wandering around the field all the time because everybody had them.
Okay, so the things that are possible inside the Eye of Terror, the micro civilizations that might exist in there. I mean, we've got the demon worlds, we've got the crone worlds, we've got the traitor legion strongholds, we've got a wide variety of very strange corrupted planets, but there's probably, I mean, I would expect there to be some semi-stable human micro civilizations. Not micro, like, like they could be planet wide, it could be global. Also Xenos, there could be aliens living in there.
Mm-hmm.
We know there's aliens who live in the warp. There's certainly aliens that could live in a place that's where they overlap. We know that there's that one planet Sublime that is literally a trading hub. So there's probably reports and other places where demons and renegades and aliens bargain together in some form of like neutral ground. There even could be weird pocket dimensions or time zones where people experience loops, refighting the same war over and over again, stuck in an endless campaign of only war in the grim darkness of the far future.
There is only war.
What are some things as a game master? What are some places you would have your people encounter within the Eye of Terror?
Well, aside from all the things we mentioned, but like if I was going to go weird with it and go, okay, we definitely have civilizations that have been born, lived, died. Okay, so this is me lifting from like stealing an idea from myself because I have a Star Trek setting that I want to run someday called Strange Old Worlds.
Okay, I like this.
And it's about an archaeological vessel, Starfleet vessel that is full of scientists, and they go to old worlds closer to the core. So it's basically that would be my thing, is that that there are the closer that you get to the center of the Eye of Terror, that you find these. I would have them run into old worlds that are have civilizations that rose, lived, died, and then it's been and then another species evolved up the ladder, and they run into that, and because I love the idea of like dogs evolving after we're gone, and them going, oh, the gods, yes, they fed us every day and took us for walkies, like that kind of thing. I would definitely do stuff where it was. I mean, it would be weird and horrible because it's in the Eye of Terror, but it would definitely be, old worlds that reached some degree of pinnacle. But then I'd be probably like building my own lore around the Eye of Terror, so that they go, aha, our theory is correct, that there were civilizations living in this psychic space.
Okay. Is there any particular aspects of the lore you'd like to bring in and involve? Would you like offer glimpses of other times, places,
Oh yeah,
war in heaven?
Yeah, that's it's good. Oh, I'm always going to do that. I'm gonna drop hints and play with war in heaven stuff as much as anybody will withstand. The last Wrath and Glory game I ran, the first mission was checking out some stuff on an ice world because they worked for a rogue trader. Got there, and all of a sudden, Necrons started popping up like daisies out of the ice, and but it furthered on to this whole idea of like a black hole bomb that Chaos was working on. But yeah, and then I had him find the remains of a Quark and stuff. I was like, I wanted to play with that lore heavy, but I'm always digging into that kind of stuff.
It could be fun also to see some other, like we say, other reflections of other realities, if you will, like
Yeah.
glimpse Star Wars, for example. See a Jedi, go, oh my god, horrible! I never want to go there.
You're like, oh, look, it's a human with a laser sword. How does it know to stop? It's just a beam of light. Then they see Vulcans and they're like, all right, what happened to the Eldari in this universe? It's enslaved to people wearing velour shirts.
So the new lore we have on the Eye is from Reign of Iron, which is the new campaign book. It features Perturabo and the Iron Warriors. And they're fighting over basically where the Eye used to be. And it's set after the fall of Cadia. It's set after the creation of the Great Rift. It is so the Eye of Terror is not just an abstract backdrop. It is actually the horizon of the stuff that's happening in the Reign of Iron. The Cadian Gates, while Cadia was gone, the Cadian Gate, which are the worlds and stuff around it, they haven't completely fallen. There are still Imperial bastions. There's still Forge worlds. There's still people holding out in that region. Like I mentioned, Agrippina was swallowed up by the Great Rift. That is true, but it's still holding out. It's still a bastion under siege by Perturabo and his guys, because it's a Forge world. Agrippina is. But that the book kind of details that while the Eye of Terror may have opened up wide, there are still worlds within it that are resisting being obliterated by chaos. They are still manifest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm looking at the books now. That's some cool stuff. That's interesting.
Supposedly, Perturabo has been preparing for this for thousands of years, if not ever since he arrived. We're not sure exactly, but the Iron Warriors are described as using the Eye of Terror as a secure mustering and staging ground, and then pushing out to conduct a vast siege of the surrounding worlds, guarding that exit, or what used to be the exit. And I mean, trying to fight a war in the Eye of Terror, that's got to be the most horrific war zone ever. There's warp anomalies, demonic incursions, the sense that reality itself is fraying at the edge of the map. That would freak me the hell out. I mean, granted, Forge worlds are places where you're going to find a lot of guys who have been lobotomized or who are thinking with computers in ways that probably make them less susceptible to existential dread than myself. But trying to imagine fighting a war.
Yeah.
So if you want to know more about the Eye of Terror, the first place you should go look is the Reign of Iron expansion book, because that is a rule book, and the stuff in there is what's considered primary canon. That is almost certainly true, like as opposed to something in a novel or a role-playing game, which are not necessarily true. There's also a book from 1999 called The Eye of Terror by Barrington J. Bailey, which is a great name. And it follows a Imperial Navy effort to invade the Eye of Terror itself. I wouldn't say it's a great book, but it's a fun book, and especially if you want to see like the really old the really old ideas of what the Eye of Terror was in the lore. Then there's the book the stuff that you mentioned, Eason, which was the Scalathrax.
Yeah.
The Weakness of Others, which is a Night Lord story where there are definitely Night Lords fans in our chat, so go check that one out. And there's Cadia Stands by Justin Hill. Excellent book. That's a very good one.
Great book.
Watchers of the Throne and Lords of Silence by Chris Wright. Those also involve the Eye of Terror. Watchers of the Throne is told before, during, and after the fall of Cadia and the opening of the Great Rift, so it does involve characters that are processing what's happening about the Eye of Terror becoming that much bigger. Lords of Silence is one of the best Death Guard novels. At least that's what most people say. And I'm more of a Nathaniel Garrow guy myself when it comes to the Death Guard, but it does follow a Chaos Warband that is operating out of and around the Eye and similar warp-tainted regions. So that's another place to go. Those are the places I would recommend you look for more information about the Eye of Terror. These days, especially in the current lore, it is just a part of a much bigger issue, that being the Great Rift. And I think we're going to be living with the Great Rift for quite a while. It's almost 10 years old because it came out in 2017, but I'm expecting it to last at least another 10 years before they do something different with it.
Cool. I'll be even older. So
you're like, I'm looking forward to that in my 60s.
Keep going.
In my 70s.
10 years from now, I'll be 71.
Oh my God. Oh, we're so old.
I am, but I look good. So,
well, at least you got that going for you. Ricky Chapman coming in with a steel chair. Thank you, sir. Some of the things that we found in the warp, this is from his role-playing game campaign,
cool.
are a version of our ship from an alternate timeline full of mummies.
That's good stuff.
That's freaking awesome, dude. I would love to see that.
Speaking, and I'm not saying you ripped it up from anything, but like I love a good I ran into myself story from another dimension. I think that's fantastic.
They found a giant calcified hand bigger than a moon covered in Eldar runes. That is metal. I love that. And a living interplanetary wine river. Yeah, Werewolf the Apocalypse had some pretty interesting regions in the spiritual realms, the Gnostic realms of Werewolf's setting. And there were some really good ideas in there that you might look at for things you could find in the Eye of Terror. Like the living river of wine. It's pretty good. I like that one.
I like this. Oh, sorry. Good.
No, you please.
I was going to say is I like the idea of the giant calcified hand bigger than a moon. And then I was like, covered in Eldar runes, which to me just seems like tagging. It's just like the Eldar out there with spray cans. They're just like, yeah, well.
Gilroy was here.
Yeah, here's my Craft World's logo to let you know stuff.
Probably wouldn't be Craftworlders. Might be Chikari, though. Because Craftworlders, remember, Craftworlders are kind of the Amish of the Eldar. They were the most puritanical of their company.
Yeah, they're on Rumspringer, and the kids are out tagging giant hands. Oh, the Corsairs? Yeah, no, the Corsairs are not out there tagging that stuff. What they're doing is they're trying to figure out how they can steal it, take it home, and sell it. It's like this. Okay, how many? It's bigger than a moon, which is a new metric we're going to use. And like, drag it back home and sell the calcium.
Well, remember, Corsairs, their motivations vary by the prince, the pirate prince. So there might be an Eldar prince who's like, yeah, I'm not really in it for the money. I'm in it for the legend. I'm in it to build my story.
I just want to tag everything. So every time you guys are out there, I don't care what it is. I want you to write my name on the side of it. This guy's suddenly the most 80s of 80s bros right now. It's just like, yeah, I need you.
I mean, it's not out of the question.
You like the Rumspringer idea? Yeah, I was spitballing.
Ricky Chapman says the Eye of Terror, not the warp. So some of the things we found in the Eye of Terror is that he was just clarifying.
Oh, I see.
Thank you, Ricky Chapman. Appreciate that. Yeah, that is some really interesting stuff to find. One of the things I would love to create is actually a random table of things you find in the warp, in the Eye of Terror specifically.
Don't threaten me with a good time. I will build that tomorrow. There'll be 100 dollars. Yeah.
Do it. I dare you to do it. I bet you come up with a good one.
Oh, there we
go. Oh no. That's a pretty wild idea, actually. It would be a fun random table. The old Realm of Chaos book actually had a lot of random tables of stuff. And that's where I would find my inspiration in something like that.
Well, once upon a time when my website was working, and I keep talking to the guy who runs it, takes care of it, and he's not getting anything fixed. I'd create a lot of random tables, just like, generate random numbers, select part one of sentence from this file, select 2 from this one, and built a Wrath and Glory mission generator and all this other stuff. But I love goofball tables, but I also want them automated so I can just like hit a refresh button and get like 12.
That would be nice. We got Ricardo Andre, my debate partner. This is, I think Ricardo is the one who's the big fan of the Night Lords. He says, "Damn, forgot this was a thing. What have I missed, Ross? Bullet point version." Well, we talked about the origin of the Eye of Terror, where it may have been initially opened during the War of Heaven because the Necrons had prepared for it with the pylons on Katie and various other things. One of the most interesting bits was us discussing like what could have possibly been the reason, and like Rush 21129 was pointing out that it was possibly the site of the final battle of the War in Heaven. We debated whether or not it could have been the Kroorks or the Eldari who created a bunch of warp scars during the War in Heaven that could eventually that may have been opened by the Great Rift and other things. We discussed what worlds are within the Eye of Terror, like the Crone worlds and the Demon worlds. We talked about the Traitor Legions and Abaddon. We talked about the renegades and rogue psychers and mutants that go there and live there. And we talked about what conditions are like within the Eye of Terror and how to get in and out, which used to be the Cadian Gate. And we talked about the formation of the Great Rift and the fall of Cadia, which we, of course, covered later. And now we just finished going over some of the more interesting fan theories about the Eye of Terror. Ice Veins, thank you, sir, for the super chat. Would it be possible that an alternative version of the Imperium exists in the Eye of Terror in a pocket dimension that is chaos aligned, that is ruled by a lost Primarch? I mean, this was basically the theory that the Warhammer world used to be a world within the Eye of Terror. So if that is a theory that most people say, yes, that could certainly happen, I don't see why you couldn't have an alternative Imperium in a pocket dimension inside the Eye of Terror. It's a place where it's a place of metaphor. So if you can dream it, if you can think of it, it could possibly exist there somewhere.
I also like the idea that that we're going to finally find out that we're not ever the 2 lost Primarchs. I mean, it was like.
So we did on this channel on Wednesdays, we have our bonus show, and our bonus shows we do our what ifs, and we also do our let's builds. And we did a Let's Build a Lost Primarch just a couple of weeks ago. And it was actually really cool because we built this Mesoamerican culture Primarch with like feathered serpent as his symbol, and all of his legion was very, and the way that the ended was in that Let's Build was we decided that they had decided to basically they had a vision of the future and decided to destroy themselves in a ritual sacrifice to try to avoid it. And that's why that Primarch and his legion are gone and no one ever speaks to them, because they gave up on reality.
So you want to hear my theory?
Okay.
It's not a terribly serious theory, but as a guy who owned a Space Marine that was a woman in 1989, those are the two women. 2 lost Primarchs were the women, because it was like, there's some book, I don't remember what it is, where the Emperor goes, why didn't I just do dudes? Why didn't I do women? Anyway, that's what I would play with.
Ricardo says his theory is that the warp storms, like the Rift, the Eye, and the Maelstrom, are fault lines from the days in the War in Heaven opened by the old ones to boost psychic powers in real space.
I like that.
That's not a bad idea.
I don't just like that. I like the fact that you said fault lines, and that's evocative. That's extremely like. Then it puts your mind exactly where it's supposed to be. That these are like earthquakes. These are natural, maybe naturally occurring events. But yeah, that was solid.
Well, we're in the last part of our show here. So, Eason, could you tell us your final thoughts on the Eye of Terror? And don't be afraid. Go big. Like, you're a 40K fan. You've been a 40K fan for a very long time.
Yes, I have. All right. Final thoughts on Eye of Terror. What I would love to see them do with the Eye of Terror is, from a story point of view, is go do what we did here. Go big. Ask every author that they've got and go, come up with a wacky idea because we're going to start making this bigger. And if it's a dark reflection, I want to see more of that. I also would like to see them explore the origins. Is it a natural origin? I'd like them to answer the questions that we asked today, which is, did the emperor know that it was always there? Even back in, when he was walking around Bethlehem or whatever. And yeah, I'd also like to see, as a lot of people mentioned, different, parallel dimensions. I think that would be fun. Is like not just time travel, but like you pop open a hole and there's the emperor and his very good friend and head and most loyal follower, Horus. And we're in a universe where Horus didn't fall. Or better yet, no. This is just to annoy you. Is just to have like you pop into a parallel dimension and there's the emperor surrounded by his most loyal legion, the Night Lords, and they're just.
Can you hold the fort for me for a couple minutes? I'm gonna head. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to be entertaining while Ross is not here.
Talk about the Eye of Terror or whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm actually, it was because we were talking about the Eye of Terror. I started looking at the Reign of Iron. There's a lot of Red Corsair stuff in there, and I kind of like the red, the Red Corsairs because they're, because they go back a ways. Like I got a copy of White Dwarf from back in the '90s, early '90s. The Red Corsairs in them. I was like, that looks like a fun group. The Eye of Terror is just God's playground, the God's playground. That's fair. I guess the question is, because the only gods in general that we see, other than like Mork and Gork and then the Kilimanjaro and stuff, are mostly bad. Like, and I'm kind of into that. Gotrek walks out of the Eye of Terror and fights Abby, who wins. I'm sorry, Gotrek wins 100% of the time. I love those books because we were talking way earlier, we were talking about Michael Moorcock and his influence on 40K, and the Gotrek Felix stuff reminds me of Fritz Lieber and his Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser series. And so Fritz isn't with us anymore, but I really enjoy those Gotrek Felix books.
I'm back.
See, I kept them entertained.
Great.
Everybody say I did a good job. Tell them I did a good job. What are my favorite fantasy stories? All right, Michael Moorcock's entire Eternal Champion saga is pretty close to the top, if it's not the top. Roger Zelazny's first 5 Amber novels. I didn't care so much for the ones that came after that, but I'm a huge Roger Zelazny fan. If y'all have never read A Night in the Lonesome October, go get a PDF, go get an ebook, buy a physical copy, and start and read chapter 1 on October 1st, and read chapter 2 on October 2nd. You will not regret it. Let's see. I am more of a dark, what is today known as dark fantasy, but used to be called sword and sorcery guy. So Black Company. I like pretty much everything Mark Lawrence has done. What I'm introducing myself, I presume again I wasn't here for. Yeah, my name's Brian Eason. I go by Eason because there were 17 Brian Keiths in my high school. Mr. Vimes has been my handle for since 1984 when Usenet was around, because I'm incredibly old. And that leads back to the question of what my favorite fantasy stories. Everything that Terry Pratchett ever wrote, 100% of the time. I'll go no stop.
I'll throw in The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch.
I will throw that in if he finishes the damn series.
Yeah, I'd like him to finish the series, but that's a damn good book, and the series
is great. But just that book alone, absolutely. And see, that fits into my love of sword and sorcery and the idea of that you're grubbing in the dirt and stuff. What was that? Oh, I like the Powder Mage series.
Yeah, Brian McClellan, excellent author.
Brian McClellan. I like it. Well, and he's moving awful slow on the Lightning Prince stuff, but I'm very excited to see what he would do with that. Yeah, I love the Powder Mage stuff. Thought it was great.
Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson.
I am going to be lynched. I find him entirely predictable. I don't. It's not really my bag. I know lots of people love him, and they're shoveling massive amounts of money at him, and good for him because it seems like a nice dude. Oh, Sebastien de Castel, a Quebecois fantasy writer who is now working on like his third series, but the primary one is called The Great Coats, and it's basically fantasy, dark fantasy too. There's a lot of terrible things going on. Three Musketeers, and some of the most likable characters I have ever read in books.
To swing this back to the Eye of Terror, I want to give my final thoughts, if that's all right with you.
Of course, it's your show.
Yeah, just to get so anybody who's joining us late, Alexis couldn't make it today, and Brian Eason is a good friend of mine. I asked him to join me to talk about the Eye of Terror because he's got an interesting perspective on it. And for me, I think the Eye of Terror is one of the most important things in the lore of 40K. Certainly, it was one of those things you kind of had to mention prior to 2017. After 2017, now you have to mention the Great Rift. But they're both, I mean, and the one came from the other. The Eye of Terror was symbolically a mirror, as we talked about earlier, but it's also, it's just a fascinating idea of this dark, it's the cursed forest of fantasy, but it's in space, and it's that spot you can literally point to on a map and say, here be dragons, here is where you should never go, and only bad things come out of it, right? It lends a lot of weight to the idea of Cadia as a fortress world and the Cadian Gate as a really important aspect of the lore, which that's been true for over almost 30 years at this point. So yeah, it's a really fascinating thing. It's something that I've always considered to be one of the most interesting and iconic aspects of Warhammer 40K. If you look at a map of the galaxy and you see this giant spinning hole in reality, you know it's 40K. You know it's not Star Wars, it's not Star Trek, it's 40K. That's the only one with a freaking hellmouth on the map of the galaxy. 20,000 years across, or 20,000 light years across. So, yeah, it's super important, and I'm actually really glad we did cover it in this episode. There's so much more to discuss. I'd love to jump into and talk about the Lost and the Damned, which are all the cults and the mutants and the psychers and all the crazy renegades and mercenaries and stuff that live in the Eye of Terror. Dan Ebna did talk about a world that was a little bit like Sublime in one of his more recent Ravenor books. I believe it starts with them on a Rim world.
Yeah.
With and that's kind of what I imagine, like as little pockets scattered throughout the Eye of Terror within it.
Well, if he finishes the Not trilogy,
finishes the Bequin series,
that maybe we'll see more of that. But I love that idea.
It's fascinating because the warp, according to what we know, the unfettered tides of the warp, if you look at them, you die. To gaze upon the warp is death. But the Eye of Terror is a place where the warp overlaps with reality. It's not necessarily instant destruction. It is, in fact, a more slow, insidious destruction, because you're, as I said with the Traitor Legions, they may live eternally, but they're technically not really alive at all, because they're trapped in this prison and they're just kind of going through the motions of a 10,000 year long war. So yeah, the corruption and the destruction and the darkness that you find in the Eye of Terror, is it less or greater? Actually, the question I should ask: is it greater than the destruction you'll find in the Imperium? The grinding, soul crushing oppression of the Imperium's brutal regime? Maybe? Question mark. Like, I don't know. Is it better or worse? But it's fascinating to look at it as the place where the antagonists live and where they come from and what they do. I find it just absolutely a keystone of what 40K is.
Yeah, you're on point.
All right, so we should say, where can we find you if you're doing things on the internet, Brian Eason? Do you have a Blue Sky account?
Oh yeah, it's Mr. Vine. Let me see what it is. I don't post to it very often anymore.
As mentioned earlier in the show, you can find his wife's project Geek Forge, which is a fantastic place to get all your cosplay materials.
.org.
Geekforge.org. I have been a very happy customer, so check that out for sure.
Yeah, Mr. Vimes, all one word, 6'5", at Blue Sky .bsky.com.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or .app, whatever the hell it is.
You know, I hope you do watch our other show, which is Lorebeards and Role Playing on Mondays, because the most recent one we did was about the hero system, which I know you know a little bit about.
A little bit. Yeah.
You probably get a kick out of that. That was that's also me kind of holding the fort for a while till my co-host shows up. So there's a significant portion that's just me talking to the camera.
So drag some of our other friends, like grab Bill,
yeah,
and talk about juxtapose, like going from hero system and how Prowlers and Paragons is now, because
yeah,
and obviously it's a little bit different because there's not a single head anymore. I mean, Len created the thing, but now it's out in the wild and everybody's creating for it. Is
including this guy.
Yeah, including this guy. Using it as like the hero system came out of Champions, being able to use it for different genres, in a same way that, you might do with Savage Worlds. I just think that I love Savage Worlds, don't get me wrong, but my heart lies with spend my XP to buy power.
Yeah.
That's it.
I just put up a link on the bottom there. That's a link to Harmless Forest Creature Games, which is Bill's company, publishing role-playing games. It's also where you can find products that I've made, like Accursed and Enemies Unleashed. So if you want to support me, go check out the offerings at Harmless Forest Creature Games on drivethrurpg.com. I want everybody to say thank you to Brian Eason for showing up and helping us out today. He's been a great emergency co-host. Really appreciate you, sir.
Sorry for coming on late. But
hey, you made it. That's the most important thing.
And now I have a different fan base. Yay!
Well, I'm sure we wouldn't mind seeing you again if needs must.
Yeah,
showing up.
Yeah, you just need a third wheel. I'll show up.
Well, it's more of a second wheel situation. But I'm a unicycle on my own, but together.
Yeah. We form Voltron. I will be the monkey in your wrench any day. I'm happy to do it. Warp travel is wonky. Yeah,
that is a true fact.
Absolutely true statement.
The way it was explained to me by Alan Merritt, who was the head of IP for a very long time at Games Workshop, is that the idea of traveling through the warp was like the travel across the Atlantic Ocean during the Age of Sail. You had an idea of where you were going. You had an idea of how long it would take you, but there were currents and storms and weird stuff that could happen at sea that could change all of that. You could arrive earlier than you expected or later than you expected. and it was never a pleasant journey. It was like if it wasn't tedious, it was extremely dangerous. And I can see that as a parallel to how traveling through the warp is. It's just, it's very, it's taking that idea, the concept of the danger and the risk, and ratcheting it all the way up by adding a whole bunch of demons and horrible psychic entities and things in the mix.
All right, I'm gonna send you something because A. Bertram Chandler was an Australian that was a military officer in the United States. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a series of books called the Grimes books that are basically Captain Bligh in space. Because Bligh gets that movie, Mutiny on the Bounty, gives him a bad rap because he was like a decent dude, a good officer, and it turned out that all the mutineers were bad people. But anyway,
yeah, that particular story, you're right. Yeah,
but yeah, check out A. Bertram Chandler if you like it, because it absolutely portrays space travel the way you're talking about. It's hazardous. We don't know where we're going. Oh, by the way, we don't have faster than light communication. We have to send a missile that has a warp engine on it, and it feels very much like Age of Sail, but outer space.
All right. Well, great. Thank you for showing up, and I will do the outro just myself this time. But thank you again, Eason, for showing up. Thank you, everybody, for watching. You can catch us on Lorebeards and Role Playing on Mondays, same time slot, and you can catch our bonus show on Wednesdays, same time slot. We will be seeing you again on Wednesday for more Lorebeards 40K. And if you want to vote on what's going to be coming up, go check our YouTube page. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the grim darkness of the far future, please help us out by putting a like and a subscribe. It'll help spread our heresy to more unknowing minds in the algorithm. Until next time, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only lore. Thank you.